Let's dive into the world of history, where we immediately learn that the main character is the last member of the Imperial Alper family. The father of the main character is the majestic emperor, who was once killed. Grief certainly would not have changed anything, but the daughter mourned her father as befits. Afterwards, we are told about the younger brother, the trash, a young man full of life. The next fact will be quite impartial. It turns out that he has become a real womanizer, which he remained until the very last moment, but just like his father, he was killed. But at the same time, it is known that the brother was also subordinate to the main character's fiancé. Looking at the hated young man with a growl, the girl asks why on earth they want to leave her alive. And her answer mockingly is that it's all because she is destined to see the end of this empire. The girl with purple hair looks askance, turning her attention to the traitorous occultist. Someone hidden in a hood is looking at her, only scarlet eyes shining in the darkness of the shadow. Such occultists became known only after countless wars. Seeing a traitor like them around, everything falls into place, the whole story. The girl plunges into memories, trying to remember how it all began, with the murder of her loved ones. It all started with an assassination attempt on the emperor's father on his brother's birthday. It seemed the plan had failed and the emperor was only wounded, but this turned out to be a mistake. There was poison on the killer's knife, so a slight wound was enough for the assassination attempt to be successful. The name of the poison was given a long time ago by occultists, the tear of a witch. It seemed that the occultists and witches had long disappeared, however, this poison was involved, and its intervention was carried out at the will of the creator. The main character shouts at her interlocutors, her voice breaking, and asks if they are to blame for the death of her father and the change in her brother. The silence is not broken. Then the girl again demands to know whether this is their work. The occultist suddenly smiles and wonders what difference this will make. The knight, who is designated as the traitorous groom, makes a sign with his hand. The girl is surrounded by guards. They are ready to attack, but the main character makes a mockery and asks if they really thought that she would just give up. The purple-haired girl reaches behind her collar and takes out a certain pendant with an artifact. We see that the occultist is scared when he sees the artifact, and the girl only smiles wider. This relic belonged to the first emperor according to legend. You can make a wish and sacrifice your life. The girl raises the sword and artifact in an attack that she plans to inflict on herself. The risk is justified by the motivation either to preserve honor or to fulfill the plan. Despite the fact that they are trying to restrain the occultist, he tries to break free to interfere. But the main character still accomplishes her plan and plunges the sword into herself. The artifact makes a cracking sound and breaks into pieces. A bright light streams from it. A pillar of light also bursts out of the chest of the wounded girl, and the question of true desire is asked. There is only one possible answer to this for a representative of a fallen empire. I want to correct a mistake. By grabbing and squeezing the artifact in her fist, she turns the precious ruby to ash. What mistake is asked? And in response, they say that they want to correct the mistake of their younger brother. It seems important to her to point the oar in the important, correct, and necessary direction. She believes that changes in him and his passion for girls influenced his fate. Of course, he believes that she should have been on his side, no matter what happened. The voice in response states that he understood. The purple-haired girl is shocked. It seems that not everything has been said. They just say that the wish will be fulfilled. She imagines her brother's face, and inside there is obvious panic from what she hears. Then, with a flash, he sees Theor's grin. The main character tries to explain that this is not a desire. But everything has already been decided and accepted. It's too late to change anything. It's too late. Light breaks through the thin curtains. The breeze sways them playfully. Breakfast with delicious desserts has already been served. All that remains is to call the lady. But perhaps she's already here because we notice a carefully grabbed cup and saucer. Already, a more demanding voice pulls you out of bliss completely. A girl is sitting in a chair who clearly does not expect to be here. One of the maids politely asks if she might not like the smell or taste of the tea. The girl cannot utter a word. She is trying to come to her senses, to realize where she is. But, by force of will, he quickly pulls himself together, lifts the cup, taking it more firmly, and denies that anything is wrong. We find out that this is the heroine of our short story. Now we see her in a different light. We learn that the name of the main character is Regina Bibi Ampere. She is the princess of the Elias Empire. The only problem is that the girl returned not just to her body, but to the time when she was 15 years old. Initially, of course, Regina wanted to give up everything and run away from here, forget. But responsibility does not allow this to be done. She is still a princess of a great empire. There is a duty. While some strange sounds are happening behind her, the princess only lets out a tired sigh. She really has a duty that she must fulfill. She cannot give up. As the heiress of the Alper family, she must find the traitors and restore justice. But perhaps the most important thing will be to fulfill the reasons for the desire that was made. It's time to meet her brother, for which she takes a personalized bat. In the next narration, we notice flashbacks where the bustle of the servants takes place. We also see the very young Princess Regina, who is standing by the bed, seeing her mother give birth. The torment and difficult birth completely exhausted the already fragile mother, Lady Sylvia. Everything was devoted to the birth of Theor. The mother's last wish was for her to take care of her little brother. It was after the last request and the closing of the mother's eyes that the father burst into the room. He was not at the birth due to prejudice and therefore had to wait outside the room. That's why I couldn't even say goodbye to my wife or hear her last words. Lady Sylvia left him forever without saying goodbye and leaving him with the children. It was such a grief that it was difficult to come to terms with. As a result, he became angry with his only daughter for being with Sylvia instead of him. Cruelly and unfairly, the emperor shifted all the blame onto an innocent child. Simply put, by doing so he found a scapegoat, because at that moment it made him feel better. But the next moment, the emperor approaches the cradle and takes the baby in his arms. On the other hand, Regina considered it a miracle that she, and not her little brother, was to blame. After all, it was precisely because of the difficult birth that the mother left the world, giving all her strength for the sake of his appearance. Love for Theor became boundless. Absolutely everything was forgiven him, without exception. It was this attitude that turned the boy into a famous trash prince in the future. Her father's attention to Regina was limited, but the situation changed a little when she was 12 years old. Then he summoned his daughter to an audience for the first time, which caused unreal excitement. The girl went into her father's office and smiled timidly, waiting to see what the dear man wanted to say. But suddenly, the emperor, in a cold and indifferent tone, announces that Regina is engaged. The girl begins to tremble, folds her hands, and looks scared, trying to object. But a man abruptly interrupts her and notices that there are only the emperor and the princess here, thus building a wall between them. From now on, there can be no father and daughter. Soon, the girl met her betrothed, Herman Silvage. A handsome young man with blue hair, a representative of the family of the duchy, which is one of the most important at the level of imperial power. The princess had no other options, so she accepted the engagement proposal. It is unknown whether it was simply a fateful influence or not, that's just it. At that moment, all the girl's thoughts were occupied with the antics of her younger brother. His antics continued over and over again, and in the end, he had to be taken out of the academy where he was studying ahead of schedule. But when Theor was returning back to the palace, an accident occurred and his carriage fell into the water. And no matter what happened, no matter how obnoxious the prince was, the elder sister had strong, warm feelings for him. After a long sleep in bed, Theor finally opens his eyes. A girl with a face drenched in tears looks at him joyfully and calls him by name. The prince apologizes to her and looks at her with a slight but tired smile. Needless to say, Regina is surprised by such a drastic change in her brother's behavior. Theor squeezes his sister's hand and promises not to cause any problems. It seems that this happened because of the accident. The girl complains about her own stupidity for taking this for the truth when he tumbled with just anyone 180 times. After all, intuition suggested that there was something strange, something wrong. The whole point is that I wanted to believe that Theor really intended to change. Every day he became worse, a real bastard giving away the family's wealth to scammers. His attitude got worse and worse every day. Communication was difficult. Of course, Regina realized that everything was going to hell, but she could not correctly assess the scale of the tragedy. On the night of Prince Theor's 17th birthday, the emperor was killed. He died too suddenly. Without the opportunity to properly mourn her father, the princess had to sit on the throne until the younger heir's term came up. Then the entire burden of the empire fell on Regina's fragile shoulders without her desire. Since the princess did not have the proper preparation for this, such a burden was difficult to bear. There were many questions about how it was that such a strong and resilient man as the emperor left the world in just one night. What about Herman, who was considered the betrothed groom Herman, who should be next to her? At that time, there were rumors that he was unfaithful and was having an affair with another woman. In addition, I had to solve problems with my brother's debts, which grew like a snowball. The only salvation was that we should have waited a little longer. Been patient. It was only necessary to wait for the moment when the moment of coronation of the younger brother came. On that day, Regina was able to transfer the crown and responsibility for the entire empire into his hands. It was only on the coronation day, when Theor turned 18, that everything didn't go according to plan. Herman cut off the head of the newly deceased emperor with one swing of his sword. Regina looks at Theor's body in horror. Not understanding what happened, it's difficult to comprehend. But Herman looks back at her with coldness and arrogance and reports that the Elias Empire has been destroyed. The girl rushes to her brother's body, sobbing and calling his name, while her fiancé has started a riot. Sitting while her hair is being done, the princess decides that she will not allow a riot in the future and, of course, will deal with her brother first. She decides that the behavior of an errand boy should be changed to that of a future tyrant. The maid, who arrived with the washroom, inquires about her mood and says that it has improved. Then Regina reports that she has found a solution to one problem. The maids smile, admitting that this is good. One of the maids reports that the head maid was worried about the princess. The one who was mentioned tries to brush it off, but a certain warrior intervenes, which confirms the information about concern for the mistress. Regina suddenly goes into her thoughts, trying to figure out the future. All those who now calmly and pleasantly communicate with her during the riot gave their lives for their mistress. Therefore, this time the princess makes a promise to protect them, asks one of the maids if Una knows how to control morons. But suddenly an offer comes that you should become such a waste that everyone will be afraid of him. The princess readily confirms that everything is correct as it should be. The red-haired man glances at the head maid, noticing her excitement. Suddenly, Regina declares that she's ready to become trash, that she has lost her head from love. A loud scream literally shakes the vaults of the hall. The prince demands to bring another dish. Overturning a plate of steak and glasses of drinks, Thier yells that the last dish is not as disgusting as the current one. Regina explains that in order to become more trash than her brother, she began to observe his behavior. The very realization that her brother could become an example for something makes the girl wildly happy. It took several long days of careful study of Thior's behavior. After this, the princess drew up her own set of rules on how to become trash. The first rule was to always think only about your own interests, to care only about yourself. Rule number 2 was that you shouldn't think about what the final consequences will be. Ironically, this was one of the princess's main concerns. But it's not particularly funny that it was her toys that were the first object that could be thrown away first. Already the third rule was greed. No matter how luxurious the reception was, the trash prince still retained his status. Biting the tip of her pen, the girl was wondering where she should start in getting things done. The princess realizes that no matter how hard she tries, she will hardly be able to match her brother. Sudden changes in Thior's character occurred precisely when he was 15 years old. Now it was clear that that sudden accident was in the plans of the occultists. Holding the thin porcelain handle of the cup, the girl believes that she should prevent the accident and learn more about the occultists. Taking a sip, the princess with a grin asks the maids if they think she can handle it. The head maid clearly pulls herself together and carefully selects the words she speaks. Sini says that their mistress copes with any goals she sets, but Una suddenly interrupts. Clearly worried and trembling a little, the girl decides to ask why the mistress is behaving this way. The head maid immediately shouts at her, only Una whines and explains that the princess is just acting strange. In an attempt to protect the girl, Sini reveals that she does not know what she is saying. The head maid demands that Una beg for forgiveness, which she does, choking on tears. But Regina interrupts them and says that she understands the situation and why it happened. This situation arose because the princess, who previously only cared about others, namely her brother, began to talk and worry about her feelings. Of course, the girl understands. Yes, she says out loud that she enjoys worrying about herself. The maids exhale and feel tenderness from the deepest affection for their mistress. Regina smiles at them as if about to say something else, but suddenly they hear stomping outside the door. And the next moment, the young prince bursts into the princess's chambers, blatantly asking what she received a couple of days ago. There is not a long pause. The older sister does not seem to be going to jump up and please the guest. Without waiting for a reaction, the boy holds out his hand and demands to hand over the item he received. The girl looks at the hand and then at her brother and decides that this seems like the best moment to start her strategy. Instead of fulfilling her whim, the princess notices rude behavior in other people's chambers. Thior certainly didn't expect this. He was used to complete obedience to any request or order. He starts shouting with bright abuse, demanding to carry out the order, to give back what he received. But the girl just complains where he picked up such words, while she is advised to cover her mouth. His gaze is demanding, menacing. Thior is really not used to rejection for himself. But Regina doesn't think of being shy in front of such a gaze. She looks coldly and impenetrably. The prince has a rather unflattering opinion about his sister. He believes that she is a hypocrite, which sooner or later will obey the order regarding itself, no matter how kind it is. But something changed. The older sister stopped obeying and being convenient for him. This discovery came as a shock to the future emperor, who was used to something different. The gaze turned to him exuded coldness and disgust. There was no longer that helpfulness. The sister dared to ignore Theor, which seemed strange and outrageous to him. Therefore, he decides to visit her again and put her in her place. Regina compares this behavior to the fact that the prince is like a drunkard. He rages and swears. The brother is trying to draw attention to himself. When he says that they were going to talk to him, he warns that you shouldn't blow his mind. Theor expects that if he continues to organize a kippish, they will give him what he asks for, and she will surrender. Only at this moment, Regina mentally leaves a note about the new fourth rule of scum, to do whatever they want, and turns to her brother no less rudely. The princess, looking into his eyes, wonders where his manners are. Maybe he was skipping classes or deliberately attending classes of scum, which puts him in a stupor. Smiling from ear to ear, squinting her eyes with pleasure, the girl calls him a stupid little brat. After this, all the servants are shocked, and there is obvious fuss and a fight with overturned chairs. In the next scene, both perpetrators of the scandal are in audience with the emperor. It seems that he was not ready for his daughter's behavior and that she would fight with her son. Looking up, the man asks if it is true that the princess threw a chair at her brother. But in response, there is no embarrassment, no acceptance of guilt, only a smile and a positive answer. Getting an audience with the emperor is not easy, but he quickly gathered them just enough to harm his son. The father had always refused to give his daughter an audience and did not pay attention to her during joint meals. This is the best moment to make it clear, to show the emperor. The fact that he will no longer see the meekness and timidity of the princess is not true. From now on, she will become different. From now on, Regina will show him how unbearable she can be. That is precisely why she reports that she threw the chair only because it was close, making it clear that she has become even more trash than the emperor's son. Such a statement makes the emperor's hair stand on end, and he opens his mouth in shock. Theor, sitting next to his sister, asks with vowels and doesn't know how to react. And the girl only giggles in response and remarks that she would like to throw the table, but it turned out to be too heavy. Absolutely, without changing his face or expressing guilt, he reports that the chair was just the height of the youngest heir to the empire. The emperor clenches his teeth and asks whether his daughter understands what she has done. But Regina interrupts him and explains that she threw a chair at the heir to the Elias Empire. They stare at each other, father and daughter, and no one plans to bend and give up their positions. Suddenly, it is the emperor who looks away and laments that she did not give an answer. Then the girl says that the emperor is only now becoming interested, but this is not the first time Theor himself has mocked his sister. The boy looks timidly at the girl. She has never tried to complain about him before. But Regina doesn't try to hide her grin. She openly shows it. The princess says that she will no longer tolerate it as before. That's the statement. After rebirth, the princess will no longer allow such an attitude towards herself. She is not going to accept the blame for the death of her mother. In general, no one is to blame for this. Neither the son nor the daughter. They should not bear this burden. Previously, the princess could not understand why she was obliged to bear the blame for this. But now she realizes that such responsibility no longer lies on her shoulders. Looking straight into his father's eyes, he says that he wants to ask a counter-question. The question is that although the emperor is aware that by doing so, the prince is making things worse for himself, why not strive to do something about something that causes indignation in Theor? Blushing, the boy jumps up from his seat. He clearly feels embarrassed and ashamed. But the girl is not distracted by this, and the emperor notices that Theor is just a child. Hearing this, the heir to the empire, unable to contain his emotions, runs out of the room and does not respond to the call. Regina focuses attention on the unfortunate, clearly expressing disagreement with this. He cruelly asks whether this attitude is because he lost his mother after birth, because the next heir has not yet been officially determined. Even before the rebirth of the main character, it was Theor who ascended the throne at the behest of the emperor, and he died after the rebellion. Now, Regina notices that there are two unfortunate children who lost their mother. The emperor looks at his daughter in shock, not expecting such an attack from the princess. But she continues to ask, this time for what reason the imperial law was not repealed. The emperor jumps up and shouts whether the imperial laws mean anything to her, and the girl notices that they can be cancelled by the father only at his request. After all, it doesn't matter how important the law is, the princess starts screaming. When asked such a tricky question from his daughter, the man freezes and is in no hurry to answer. He clenches his fist in anger and remarks that she is becoming impudent with such questions. But Regina turns her head away with a snort and warns that she will continue to be impudent. The father is extremely surprised by this. He wonders if she has really been thinking about something like this for so long. He wonders if he didn't notice that he wasn't the only one who lost Sylvia that day. And today is the day when the emperor hears this hysterical voice for the first time for real. Rising from his seat, it seems that the man feels something changing inside him. Regina sedately notes that she does not want quarrels and did not plan to fight for a place on the throne. The emperor takes his seat while the princess decides not to treat him as a father. She has already chosen the path, therefore following the path of scum, she will treat him as an emperor. Therefore, despite the attempt to interrupt, the girl declares that she will live as she pleases, and in the end, she will leave the palace. Noticing, moreover, that he will continue to look after the obnoxious boy, Theor, and will make him a worthy heir. Whatever happens, she loved and will love. She decided that she would prevent the uprising and save her brother. These were her thoughts at that moment. The girl clearly had a goal for the future. Further, he informs the emperor that he will leave this place and refuse to inherit the throne. This is a clear blow. Once again, the emperor does not know how to respond to this. Stretching out his hand, the man calls by name and tries to stop such cruel words. Just stopping at the door, the girl notices that the father and daughter are not here now. At the moment, there are only the emperor and princess in this office, words from the past. He adds more cheerfully about his brother's new fencing teacher and declares that he will also be present there. The emperor dejectedly reports that she is free to do what she wants. The princess leaves the office. We see that the man is clearly sad. It seems that now he has realized what he has done. Previously, the daughter, despite the attitude towards herself and the harsh actions of the emperor, called her father, but not now. Now the princess has erected a new wall between them with her own hands. Lamenting, the emperor only now realizes that he ruined everything himself. We see the beautiful vaults of the palace, the gilded decoration, beautiful angels in the niches. There is an obvious correspondence between the princess and the servant. The request from the emperor is rejected for the umpteenth time. By the way, the father began to show attention to Regina, say hello, and increase the time of their meals. This caused outright bewilderment. Why do this after what happened before? The main character appears before us, dressed in a suit that is comfortable for training, consisting of a shirt and trousers, with her hair in a ponytail. Touching her long hair, the girl remembers that she cut it off during the war so that it would not bother her. She thought that since they were a weak point, she should become stronger. A new person is before us, Aaron Vestine, the second of the sons of the greatest duchy of Vestine. Egil Vestine, the first son and heir of the Vestine family, would become the future governor of the East. As for Aaron, he is now 18 years old. This is what we learn. His sword skills are as good as his facial beauty, and he is popular with ladies. As a result, he received quite a lot of marriage proposals, but everyone was refused. One can judge that he is not interested in marriage. The heir to the dukedom is on the border, rarely appearing in the capital. Listening to this, Regina thinks to herself that for the chosen tactics, she should choose that very special one. Of course, it's worth noting here that the hated Herman is on the move in a similar vein. And while the princess was talking about the candidate, the maid Una kept chatting about this Aaron. Since the main character did not meet this type in her past life, she forgot about the existence of the Vestine's second son. Turning to the senior maid, Regina clarifies whether Aaron is ready to teach fencing to the youngest heir to the empire. In response, he stated that despite his minority, his fame reached all sides of the empire. Truth adds that almost all the swordsmen who could be useful fled from them. There is no other way. Theor needs training. 6 teachers have already changed. He needs to turn to the Duke with a request. This fact may not be pleasant, but it is an excellent chance for Regina's plan. Walking through the palace, the princess notes that she has returned at an important and most advantageous moment. Smiling, he notes that his brother will be late. There will be time for his own affairs. He remembers how Knight Johann remarked in a past life that he regretted that the princess had not studied fencing since childhood. She may not have defeated the rebels, but she definitely gained some skills. Now she has 10 years left, during which time the main character can become more adept at this. These skills will definitely be useful for her and her goals in the future. The headmaid's voice pulls her out of her thoughts. Sir Aaron has arrived. Without expecting anything special, the girl turns around, honoring the guest with attention. But then the violet eyes widen in amazement at what he sees. The gold of other people's hair catches your eye. The wind blows it and it seems to emit light. The young man's face is truly beautiful, deserving of the popularity reported. And scarlet eyes completely make you lose the ability to think soberly and breathe. This blonde is simply incredibly beautiful. The princess freezes and cannot utter a word. At that time, the young man calls himself and addresses the girl according to etiquette and so enthusiastically. To her own surprise, Regina feels incredibly embarrassed. The color frames her face, revealing a blush. And the reason for this is the voice of the second son of the Vestine Duchy. He is as beautiful as everything else. I remember that the maid talked about a pretty face, but what is in front of the main character is clearly completely different. Deciding to herself, the princess notes that a man like Aaron definitely fits the right role. The girl builds a strategy about what can be said about love at first sight. It's just distracting that the young man kneels in front of her and asks about the insult. Regina immediately denies that she was not offended by any of the arrival's behavior. Looking up at the girl, he again asks if she is unwell. This question is perplexing, but the explanation may be that unfortunate blush on the cheeks. Immediately justifying this as surprise, the princess asks him to get up quickly. Answering politely, the blonde suggests taking a deep breath he must help. Regina looks perplexed, but listens to the remark that this is how they do it in the duchy. Laughing in thought, the girl notices that this is certainly what they do when they see such a face. Trying to control herself, the main character notices the strength of hearts in those parts. In response, there was only a nice phrase about what he couldn't believe about hearts, but there were a lot of strong people out there. To her own shock, the girl wonders if she said the last line out loud and receives confirmation. Oh, our poor main character is ready to fall through the ground after this. She is still debating whether to get involved in such a person's own plan. But because his beauty is so incredible that he doesn't know if he can handle it on his own, reasoning tells her that with such a choice, there will be no questions about the strength of love. Decides that with such a beautiful face, he can destroy the empire. Out of place, moments of a past life, traitorous groom and occultist are recalled. The main character is not at all going to destroy the empire. Things are different. Having coped with herself, she asks for forgiveness for her behavior. Aaron accepts this with ease, and then the girl's tone changes. She suggests that the two of them discuss something important, whether the sire will devote time to her after the lesson. Aaron immediately bows readily, agreeing to the offer to talk. Regina gives orders for Una to bring her brother to class, but she is not immediately distracted from contemplating the Duke. There's a pause. The princess asks an awkward question: what is the place for the young man to train? Next, discussing swords, materials, and the like, the conversation is very awkward. The girl apologizes for her brother for being late, but even then it's just a polite remark. From all this tension, Regina feels goosebumps and a chill running down her back. Looking at the expressionless, handsome face of the interlocutor, he complains that he should have come later. The Duke is in no hurry to start the conversation again, to politely notice something. He just looks. The heiress to the empire believes that if you look further, you could get used to the beauty, but she is also thinking about escaping. She is definitely looking for a way to escape, offers to retreat in search of her brother and for this reason leave. Clutching the hilt of her sword, Regina follows the corridor of the castle, heading for Theon, and soon he hears screams. They were just performed by this obnoxious boy. Going out into the corridor towards the sound, he sees that the prince is demanding an apology, surrounded by servants. The servants repeat a certain memorized phrase, probably for the amusement of the young heir, but the girl tenses up at this. A second later, she moves closer to her younger brother, gripping the hilt of the wooden sword tighter. He turns to Una but says that when she arrived, everything was like this. The servants rush to her, begging Regina for salvation, which makes her shudder. She demands to know what's going on here. She wants to figure it out. An attempt to tell about what happened is interrupted by the young prince. He demands that everyone shut up. Violet eyes widen. The princess looks at her brother more closely. He is irritated and angry, gritting his teeth and not raising his eyes to her. It seems that the older sister is thoroughly irritated. This can be judged by the tone and address to her brother. The next moment, the girl demands to know what happened here. He addresses two servants. Theor tries to prevent this again, almost goes into a squeal. But suddenly he receives a remark to shut up, and this puts him in a stupor. This obnoxious boy had never received such treatment before. Regina lowers her tone and asks how long she will wait for someone to answer her. The servants who were approached report that they were simply discussing rumors that everyone was discussing anyway. There is a question about the fact that Theor, the crown prince, killed his own mother. Looking at her drooping brother, the girl notices to herself that this child should not hear such things. One servant insists that they deserve to die, while the second begs for mercy. Annoyed, Theor believes that now his sister will suggest not to take such things personally. But Regina declares that those who commit sin really deserve to die. She wonders where her younger brother's knight is, and he points his finger to the side. Turning our gaze, we see a certain red-haired young man. Jess Tarahan, the sword of the Prince of the Empire, appears to be for the lady. Making a stately bow, he observes all the norms of etiquette as expected. But there is no return greeting, only a grin from the heroine. With coldness in her voice, the girl notices why, in response to the insult, the knight did not stop it in any way. Confused, Jess Tarahan asks what she thinks he should have done. Of course, the princess realizes that it is not within the knight's competence to regulate such things. But from now on, Regina does not want to put up with this and will not allow insults to her brother. She angrily exclaims how he dares to smile and remain inactive when they dared to insult the prince. The knight, of course, did not expect this and nervously swallows in fear. Falling to his knees in front of the princess, he asks for forgiveness and mercy for his inaction. Turning to the maid, he asks Selma to bring the guards here as soon as possible. Looking at her confused brother, the princess decides to make small changes to her plan. She decides to raise a tyrant out of him so that she doesn't have to decide for him further. In the future, he will have to resolve such situations on his own. He should learn to control his anger and be able to manipulate his servants. The servants babble, asking for mercy, but Regina notices that they are asking the wrong person. Such a statement has the effect of a shell explosion. The servants are shocked, but the next moment they begin to beg for mercy more ardently. They ask to show mercy to their persons, even the same grinning knight not so long ago. The girl turns to her brother, reminds him of his status, and says that scandals cannot solve matters. A different approach is needed. She gently touches the boy's chin and asks him to stand up next time and not raise his voice. He insists that it is necessary to make it clear that what happened was completely unacceptable, and then put forward a punishment appropriate to the offense for the perpetrators. Theor does not try to argue. He only sheepishly reports that he understood what he was told. At this point, the older sister again asks with irritation whether this situation was the reason for being late for class. To the horror of the servants, a small scandal breaks out with threats with a wooden sword and screams from the younger man. A scene plays out where Theor hides behind the knight, demands him to protect the master, but he is hardly capable, and the sister advances stubbornly. The princess's servants, who are watching what is happening, note that it would be better for them to forget about what they saw. The servants who spread rumors were taken away by the guards. It is believed that the issue was resolved. Regina again reports about the fencing lesson, says that they are waiting for her brother, but he obstinately brushes it off. Then the princess, waving her sword, wonders how much Theor got it, smiling at the same time. Frightened, Jess notes that he will accompany his master without allowing him to come to his senses. He rushes headlong to the place designated for the lesson, and Regina waves her hand at them. At this moment, the maid raises the topic of rumors and receives an offer to start a new one as a solution to the plan. Getting rid of those who spread false rumors, that's the whole solution, is quite simple. Until the princess's return, rumors of the murder of his own mother haunted Theor for the rest of his life. Turning to the maid, Regina asks if it is interesting to find out what kind of rumor this will be. And he says that we will talk about his own fall and touch on the reputation of the princess. The maid is perplexed why the princess decides to do this. It's unthinkable. The only response was a grin and a message that he wanted them to finally leave her alone. She reports that she knows that there are individuals who would like to place the princess on the throne. But Regina herself does not want this. She will try to interfere with such plans. This had already happened once she was made queen regent until her brother came of age. She was crowned at the cost of killing her father through intrigue and cruelty. According to the main character, Theon is a real bastard, but she can become an even worse option. The girl's plan is to eliminate Regina B. Alper from the list of candidates for the scoundrels. We see that the main character is sitting calmly in front of the window, looking at the sunset. She made sure that the corridor between the chambers and the training ground was not visited. But unlike her actions, someone else has not shown themselves in any way. This makes you frown. A private meeting with the princess will clearly compromise her, but the game is worth the candle. Before Regina's rebirth, Duke Aaron followed his brother's path and met his death in battle while trying to contain the barbarian uprising. This death was followed by another, that of Duke Vestine, as if it had been planned. Only after this, the terrible thing began, even though the princess spent her evenings in the company of Aaron's older brother, Gilsum. The princess believed that they could become good friends, everything would be fine. But the next day, Duke Vestine was killed by Herman, Regina's fiancé. The thought that this time she will not allow such an outcome is interrupted by the notification that Sir Vestine has appeared. The maid puts exquisite and mouth-watering desserts on the table in front of the girl, and then he goes to the door to open and let the guest who has arrived inside. Regina smiles welcomingly and waits for the visitor to come inside to her. I thank the Duke for taking the plunge and coming to this unplanned meeting. She received only a phrase in response. Nothing. And then again, oppressive silence and awkwardness hangs between them. Looking at how the young man drinks tea, Regina notices that he does not take the initiative, but this does not irritate her. With a sneer, the princess asks how anyone could be angry with someone with such appearance. She decides to point out that maybe the blonde doesn't like being walked around. And here we hear agreement. Aaron believes that in this way, people are trying to hide something. Judging by the way the main character beams, it is clear that she is happy with the longest sentence she heard from him. The girl reports that she plans to end the engagement in the near future, but she is keeping something quiet. But the blonde one says in the same impenetrable and monosyllabic way that he understands. Regina, feeling uncomfortable, asks if this surprised the Duke. He says yes, it did. Then she continues, stating that this will require his help. And then there comes a completely shameless and directly obscene offer to become her lover. The girl suddenly blushes, adding in embarrassment that we are talking about a fake pact. The princess offers to conclude some kind of agreement with herself. Aaron is interested in what he will receive. This is inspiring. It means there is an opportunity to agree on something like this. Regina says that she heard that marriage is not of particular value to him, and therefore assumes that this will not cause problems. She plays a trump card, says that a connection with the heiress of the empire saves the young man from annoying popularity among the ladies. But the blonde declares that the terms of the contract should be equal. The main character asks to clarify whether this means that the conditions do not suit the Duke, and he confirms this. Regina a little apathetically admits that since he doesn't agree, it will be useless to persuade him. The next moment, the girl gets up from her seat and says that there is another option. She leans closer to the guest. The young man opens his eyes a little in panic, waiting. The next moment, they take him by the chin and inform him that this is not a request, but an order. We witness the princess's reasoning. She believes that she needs the club of love and justice. The maid tries to find out what this means, and Regina reports that she prepared this for her brother. Not long ago, a girl told the petty scoundrel that she would be watching him in class. In principle, she dealt with Theor's punishment with a wooden sword, but it would be wrong to continue like this. The main character comes up with a format, a type of future artifact to pacify the violent prince. The maid is horrified, but the girl persistently declares that she needs a club and asks to engrave her name. The maid, sobbing from hopelessness, asks what the lady will do if the emperor finds out about this. But the main character sips her tea calmly and reports that the trash is not bothered by other people's opinions at all. Johann deftly catches the unconscious maid by the arms. Regina looks at this with special attention, notices someone else's blush on her cheeks. Rising from her seat, she tries to attract the attention of the red-haired guy, waving her palm. He asks if the knight can restrain his emotions. He mockingly asks whether it is so noticeable. In response, everyone except Selma herself should be aware, but Johann is amused by how insightful everyone is. Selma and the second maid scene of rejection, questions of understanding, and mention of love. Johann Driff, after becoming the princess's personal knight, immediately fell in love with Selma and was faithful to her until the very end. He did not care about the age difference. He didn't care that she was a widow, but until the moment of rebirth, their love never blossomed. They both died without having time to find out about their feelings. It was not clear how Selma felt about this. Finishing her tea, Regina notices that this time she wants to change her fate. She turns her head and notices that Una's tea skills are growing every year. Una fearfully declares that she is being glared at, and Selma remarks that it is not time for tea. Looking at all this, Johann notices changes in his mistress, and she asks if he is afraid that he will become a knight for the princess of the trash. In response, only a frivolous remark that he was only following orders. And then he adds that the lady tenses just at the sound of Her Highness's name. Not understanding what they're talking about, the princess asks to clarify which lady Johann is talking about. Lady, as it turns out, the nickname of Knight Theor is Jessie Tarahan, who lived like a girl until he was 5 years old. Having learned about this, Regina briefly falls into a stupor and tries to digest such facts. Immediately, the main character makes the assumption that this could be a family tradition, immediately adding that they believe that by hiding in a female form, one could believe that the witch would not curse her fate. This leads to certain thoughts. It seems that the princess is thinking about something of her own. The knight adds that because Jess, having matured, remained pretty, they continued to call him as before, lady. The girl wonders if her brother's knight is really handsome. Johann replies that he is quite handsome. Lately, Regina has seen a lot of beautiful people, Theon and Sir Aaron. The girl thoughtfully bites the tip of her pen, reflecting on recent events. She remembers the moment when she ordered Sir Aaron to become her lover. After this, there was an oppressive pause. The blonde looked at her unreadably and in surprise. But surprisingly, he didn't argue. He agreed. He just asked about his future intentions. And she revealed that she plans to become a trash princess, one-sidedly in love. The Duke, according to her, should have treated her the same as a princess of the empire. After this, she asks to agree to be in a relationship with her due to great persistence. While the sire is thinking, Regina decides that such a plan is quite acceptable to her. He adds that if he doesn't mind, their relationship should lead to an engagement. There is a clarification about disinterest in marriage. The princess wonders how she can ruin someone's life like that. I remember, brother, she herself does not want to ruin someone's life in the same way. When asked if there are any other questions, the blonde says that he agrees as long as it remains a pretense. This question amuses the main character. She says that there is nothing to worry about. And with a smile, she adds that she will never love him. That's her promise. And now, since there is no turning back, Regina should make some noise and act. Next, there will be a small rumor that no one expects now. The princess asks whether Selma sent the letter she asked for, and she confirms the sending. When asked what is in the letter, the girl says that she asked Duke Silvage to find another partner for the upcoming holiday. Selma, in shock, tries to ask again, but the princess sends a new letter with Una to the Duchy of Vestine. This letter reports the princess's visit there today. Hearing this, Una turns pale before her eyes. She did not expect such a decision from the mistress. She wonders who will send arrival letters on the day of arrival. At this moment, Selma is already on the verge of hysteria. She tries to say something to the mistress, but her tears of fear interfere with her. But Regina herself is calm and cheerful. She is interested in what makes the maid angry, and so she heads to the Duchy of Vestine on a rich carriage. Now he's trying to remember what happened in another reality on his brother's 11th birthday. Plunging into memories, the princess becomes gloomy and remembers two events. Theor got drunk, soldiers suffered from his dance with swords, his bride completely fell unconscious. And the second event was an assassination attempt on the emperor, and as a result, the celebration turned into a tragedy. Of course, his brother's behavior was disgusting, but no worse than his fate in the future. He became a six, not only wasting all the empire's wealth in vain, but he contacted the princess's fiancé, Duke Silvage, and even gave him the imperial seal. Even though the seal was quickly returned, Regina is determined not to allow this to happen. This time, she will do everything to prevent her father's death, either by stopping it or by preparing an antidote. It turned out that the recipe contains the Danilovsky flower, which the Duchess of Vestine grows in her garden. Looking out the window, the princess finds it a relief that this ingredient grows here. Already arriving at a luxurious mansion, the girl decides to collect flowers and discuss a deal with Aaron. And so, her carriage is met at the main gate. Probably the message of arrival has been received. With the help of someone else's hand, Regina gets out of the carriage and looks around at those greeting her. She is greeted by the eldest son of the dukedom, Sir Gilles Vestine, with decorum and nobility. He asks to forgive that he is meeting him and not his father, but the latter is away. The main character beams with a smile and says that there is nothing wrong with this. She herself appeared suddenly. At that time, in her thoughts, she hopes to make the Vestine family her allies. Smiling sweetly, the girl reasons that she should at least leave a positive impression now. And then suddenly, she takes a little closer look at the eldest of the Duke's sons. A memory arises of the evening spent together with him before his rebirth. But the blonde notices a tense and tenacious gaze on himself as if he feels it. He asks her if he did something wrong, but the princess denies that everything is fine. Already drinking tea, Regina declares that there is no need to worry. She is here for Danilin's flowers. Giles immediately responds that he could send flowers at her first request. The princess says that it was not difficult for her to come for the flowers herself, although her arrival was devoid of all manners. The only distraction is a knock on the door, which distracts both the guest and the owner of the house. Seeing who enters the room, the girl immediately blushes without being able to control it. This is Ser Aaron in an open white shirt, handsome as always, now especially attractive. He apologizes for the late greeting and says that he came immediately after training. Suddenly, Regina declares that although this is his house, walking around like that is a real crime. There is a pause. Giles watches sideways. Aaron and Regina look at each other, the latter seething with anger. Having pulled herself together, the princess gets down to business again and asks permission to collect flowers. But when she is informed that permission is not needed at all, she adds that she needs Aaron to accompany her in the garden. The younger brother reacts immediately, helps the lady up politely, and offers his hand. Giles looks at this with surprise and says that he will also send servants to accompany him. But the couple is already heading towards the exit, which causes some bewilderment in the eldest of the brothers. A new character, Barbara Vestine, is the most beautiful woman in the Empire. It is not surprising that the genes passed on beauty to Aaron with such and such a mother. It is logical. I remember that they now say that he is the most handsome man in the Empire. Entering under the arches of the greenhouse, the main character concludes that she has found the ideal man. It's just wonderful here. I can't believe that the Duchess herself raised everything, but Aaron confirms this before she went to the hospital. Politely inquiring about her well-being, Regina, accompanied by her sire, steps further into the depths. Leaning closer to the young man, the princess whispers whether they are being overheard here. The answer is no. She further reports that before her arrival, she sent a letter to Silvage County. The blonde clarifies what she is getting at. Then the girl reports that despite arriving separately, it is the Duke of Vestein's son who will accompany her. This is exactly the blow the main character planned for the traitors on Theor's birthday. Further, she reports that after her brother's dance with his bride, Aaron continues for her that he will invite the princess to the dance. After this, people will certainly be immediately seized with envy, and they will begin to spread rumors. If they see the princess without a groom and in the company of the second son of the Duke of Vestein, this will offend Hermann. After this, Regina announces that she will openly announce that she is breaking off the engagement. But he continues what he plans to do next, but the toe of his boot touches the stonework. Realizing that she is losing her balance, the girl raises her hand and wants to grab onto something. Aaron, of course, rushes to her to help, to pick up her highness. A strong palm clasps your waist, prevents you from falling, holds you tightly. He presses the princess to him and they freeze, being so close and looking into each other's eyes. The princess squints her eyes as hard as she can. She was quite frightened by surprise. And then she hears a question regarding her. Is she okay now? And immediately opens her eyes. Only to her shame, she realizes that she's lying on the floor and a blonde man is lying on top of her. Having risen, the young man looks into her face, wondering if the princess is injured. But Regina is far from understanding that she's okay. She's in panic, in love, because her heart is responding now. The blonde makes a new attempt, calls the girl, asks what's wrong with her. But the main character realizes that her heart is in danger from someone else's proximity. She is already starting to pray just to protect the heart that is trembling in her chest. Trying to pull herself together, the girl asks to get off. Aaron instantly agrees. The young man gets up and throws a certain board away from him. At the same time, the princess is also trying to get up from her seat, covered in flower petals. Aaron reaches out to her hand and again offers to help, noticing how excited Her Majesty is. Reluctantly, the girl accepts such help and finally gets to her feet. She demands that the guy forget about what happened as quickly as possible, and he readily agrees. After that, having straightened her dress, Regina clarifies where she stopped in the conversation. Then, the fair-haired young man reports that she planned not to interfere with the fuss after refusing the engagement. The girl looks at him with blinking eyes, notices that he is reliable. The guy nods. He is. Only now this handsome guy is starting to openly infuriate her. She wants to hit him. Should it be noted that such situations had never happened to Regina before her rebirth. Of course, there is a lot of awkwardness in this, however. On the other hand, the main character is happy. He asks if he can go pick flowers, but Aaron says that the servants have not arrived yet. But, the girl insists, she sees an empty pot and a scoop not far from them. Just right. Looking back, Vestein wonders if they expect him to do this himself. Regina breaks into a smile and asks a counter-question. Should she really do this? And he immediately gives the task to his court lover to collect the most beautiful ones. Soon we see the imperial daughter's carriage leaving the mansion with a decent amount of flowers. The brothers are standing at the gate. The older one asks what it was. The younger one replies that he was invited to the celebration of the heir to the empire. Giles is having fun and notices that his brother will be suffocated by the attention of the ladies, but Aaron says that he already has a partner. The older brother turns to the younger brother, who immediately adds that he does not have a lover. But Giles is trying to figure out what's wrong, because it turns out that the partner is what she is. When asked whether the princess herself is his partner, Aaron notices that he cannot answer. Giles understands the answer as a positive result and tries to understand what is the reason for such a decision. She is a former princess of an empire that is in disgrace, Regina B. Alper, pathetic and faded. But the girl he saw today is not at all similar to that previous image. The man wonders what made him change so radically and so abruptly. Making a new attempt, the older brother clarifies whether they will answer a direct question, but Aaron resolutely rejects this. Then Giles again calls on the younger one to pay attention to his words. He is ready to listen. In fact, he makes a comment about the guy's appearance. How dare he show up like that? To put it bluntly, his appearance is dubious, too frank for a princess's visit. Continuing to scold, he notes that despite the hasty arrival, it was still necessary to prepare. But Aaron himself remembers their agreement to continue with her as before. It seems that he did just that, behaved as he did with the princess in general, without embellishment. The young man was efficient, carried out the orders given to him perfectly, as he should. An attempt to justify himself. He didn't want to keep him waiting. Giles demands the truth and, in the end, a confession. He was too lazy to change clothes. This causes an outburst of anger and frustration in the older brother. He covers his face with his hands. In an attempt to reason, the Vestine heir says that after coming of age, the princess will become the most beautiful maiden of the empire. But Aaron argues, stating that he must remember that appearance is not the main thing for him. This always annoyed the older one, but for the younger one, the main thing is that they don't hate him. Giles states that this pisses him off even more than other statements for sure. Looking at such an admonition, of course, the youngest of the brothers understands what the elder is talking about. Aaron remembers the promise not to love him. The guy hopes that this will be the case. A sharpened cleaver cuts through the space and cuts what has been prepared. The chief cook fearfully remarks that Her Majesty could be injured by such a cleaver. But the girl replies that even if you can't tell, she is very good with a knife. She places the chopped ingredients into a pot of boiling water, so deftly. The cook tries to warn the princess that large quantities of Danilov flowers cannot be consumed. But Regina is determined. She will save her father, even if the broth tastes unpleasant. The servants are trying to understand their mistress's motivation, why she is doing this, and in response only about the benefits of the stomach. When asked whose stomach, they immediately answer that we are talking about the stomach of her father, the emperor and her brother. The servants are shocked by this statement and decide that the girl intends to poison them. The girl turns and looks at the servants with suspicion. They are too quiet, but she calculated everything, even prepared the silver dishes. The interesting thing is that the poison of the witch's tear could not harm women. Years passed, but the reason for this could not be found out. Perhaps the reason was the female creator herself, who was a witch. But the invention of the antidote itself is one big adventure and accident. Of course, there is concern about the wrong recipe, because there is not much information about the antidote, but it's not for her to drink. The entering servant sleepily announces that it is time for breakfast, squeezing his way inside. He expected to see a pretty princess who decided to play cook in the kitchen, but he notices a witch with a cauldron and a potion. The substance, terrible in color and smell, is poured into the kettle with a ladle. Full of enthusiasm and energy, Regina decides that it's time to treat her family. The princess enters the dining room. There are two people in it, brother and father. She greets them. The emperor, noticing the tray that she is carrying, was already about to be nostalgic, but the girl decisively interrupts. He pours the prepared broth into cups and asks to try it, talking about the benefits of the stomach. The prince and the emperor look at what is proposed with obvious apprehension and ask again about the benefits. But Regina again notices that her father should drink and then he will feel young. Not quite sure what he should do, but the determined man still takes the cup. After all, he promised himself that he would not let his daughter down again, a commendable attitude. But after a couple of sips, tears come to his eyes and he is ready to cry from the abomination. The taste is terrible. It makes the whole body numb and the tongue is ready to fall off. That's what the man feels. Next in line is her little brother. Regina glares at him and he flinches. Stuttering, Theor asks if she really decided that his sister's gaze would frighten him, but a club was reserved for him. Therefore, the next moment, the boy is seated at the table and they are persistently going to treat him. The prince tries to resist the instruction, but he is countered, saying that the priest has already tried. Frowning with displeasure, Theor makes a guess what kind of rubbish it will taste like, but he's unlikely to understand. But the boy jumps up with a squeal and tries to escape, twisting out of his hands. Sticking his tongue out, the prince runs away from the dining room, saying that he will not drink such rubbish. Regina is in no hurry to catch up with him. Soon he will learn about love and justice without it. But suddenly she notices that her father's portion is not finished, and this makes the girl smile and the man tremble. Then he calmly reports that in a cold state she is even more disgusting. And then with a sweet smile she adds that, out of concern for his health, she has been brewing the broth since dawn. The father's jaw drops, but having no other choice, he understands that he needs to drink everything to the end. Gathering her strength, she courageously drinks the broth to the end, for the sake of her daughter. Regina can't even believe that there is a person who is capable of drinking this to the end. When the cup clinks on the saucer, the princess immediately gets up to leave. The emperor asks where she is going and the girl reports that she eats little at breakfast, adding that from tomorrow Selma will bring healing tea every morning. Of course the man is shocked, but his daughter reports that this should be done on a regular basis for health reasons. The emperor sobs again, this time not from bad taste, but from the hopelessness of his situation. Meanwhile, Regina, with his permission, announces that she is leaving the dining room. The father tries to call her, to bring her back, but the girl has already left and asks Una to bring a club. After all, the time has come to visit your little brother and give him a portion whether he wants it or not. We see the princess taking a bath when it is reported that the emperor has chosen a punishment for the slanderers. She believed that this would happen faster, but everything was delayed as the investigation was carried out. They were given a ban on visiting the capital, which turned out to be a lighter punishment than Regina had expected. Everything happened as they discussed it only among themselves and repented of their judgments. The girl sighs and leans her thin, graceful palm on the side of the bathtub. She tells the maid that the upcoming banquet is extremely important. Selma promises to keep an eye on everything. By the way, the senior maid does not understand the reasons for the mistress's behavior, but she has not made mistakes before. Selma simply decides that she will just wait until she is told the reasons for this. Yes, she just needs to wait for the mistress herself to tell everything. Suddenly remembering something, the princess says to put the alcohol away from her brother. The maid says that coming of age is not soon, but Regina notices that we are talking about Theor. She orders that if the prince behaves badly, she should be called immediately. Next, the main character asks about Herman's partner and finds out that she has become the lady from the Vadis Viscounty, Anita Vadis. She was orphaned not long ago, and it was Duke Silvage who helped her survive such a moment. Selma says that their relationship is not exactly the same, but they say that they are like brother and sister. Then Regina looks ahead unreadably and declares that they will meet soon. Having splashed on the water, the girl is determined to prevent theft with the pretext of being the princess's fiancé. This is a declaration of war. On the streets, you can see bustle and cheerful conversations. You can hear chants and children scurrying about. The aroma of various street treats, hot and delicious, hovers in the air. Meanwhile, at the castle, Regina stands on the balcony preparing to start her own war. Someone destroys the peace of the moment, calls her name quietly, calls for attention. Then Her Highness turns around with languid laziness, demonstrating the sophistication of her image to our gaze. The maids freeze, unable to say a word, and look at their mistress enthusiastically. But some charm of the moment quickly dissipates from the sharp clap of palms. The head maid calls not to stand idle, but to return to duties. Una, almost with tears in her eyes, admires her mistress out loud. The princess nods. Good, if this is really true. But she clarifies whether the girl has forgotten anything. Regina continues, noting that Sir Aaron will be her partner today. Una shudders in fear. In fact, it would be easier for her if she looked rustic compared to her companion. He thinks to himself about how the Duke's son will dress, whether he will choose more festive clothes for the occasion. My head is a mess of thoughts. I simultaneously want to see Aaron and send him away. The main character asks the maid what she thinks, whether he will like the gift, a ruby, which will highlight his beautiful eyes. Selma, who helps with jewelry, reports that even if he does not understand jewelry, he will truly appreciate the efforts. As a decoration, the girl chose a brooch for him that would match her own. There was little time for preparation, but the power of money certainly has its advantages. Suddenly, a servant knocks and announces that it is time for the heiress of the empire to leave. Regina exhales heavily, gathering her strength before appearing at court. The day has come. Now she will have to face her enemies. Squeals are heard in the crowd, of course. The ladies saw Aaron, who, although good by rumors, is in reality incredible. An elegant outfit so perfectly emphasizes the ideality of his beauty, in every feature. There are rumors that the Duke's son does not often attend such events. Today he will become the princess's partner and inquires about his engagement to Herman. At this moment, the eldest of the Weinstein brothers is watching his brother, monitoring the situation. But his loneliness dispelled, his uncle Egil Weinstein appears and smiles. The uncle notices that all the attention in the room is now focused on the youngest. Giles replies that he is staying away because of the opportunity to think. Here, Egil wonders where the eldest brother's partner is. He didn't come here alone. He reports that Charlotte is ill, on the other hand. He would not have allowed her to come here. But, in response to such a statement, the uncle egged his nephew on, saying that they are not yet married. True. Now Giles is thinking about something else. About his brother who, even despite his imperial status, will reject the one he doesn't like. He just remembers the moment when they peacefully went into the garden and it becomes unclear how the girl hooked him. A scream distracts him from his thoughts. Egil is unhappy that he is being ignored and makes him shudder. But the young man just sighs, because according to his conclusions, there is nothing to listen to. All the same, they are talking about one thing. Suddenly going on the defensive, he notices that he never went on dates, which shocks him. When asked who said this, Giles says that his parents are threatening him that they will drag him to the front for this. If you think about it, the first son of Duke Weinstein is quite talkative, and it's not easy to be with him. But the second son is no less complex, although he is extremely silent, and you can't get a word out. While eating the cakes, Egil is amazed at how his brother raised his sons to be so different. At that time, Giles believes that the secret of how the princess conquered her younger brother will become clear when she comes out. So the footman appears in the hall, clears his throat, prepares himself internally before starting, and then he loudly announces, "The son of the Empire Alper and his crowned children." The footman announces the appearance of majestic persons, the emperor himself and his offspring. They walk around the hall and everyone around them salutes them, with a bow or curtsy. Finally, the emperor takes his place on the throne and we thank the arrivals for coming to the celebration of his son. Smiling like the bright sun, the princess congratulates her brother on his birthday. The boy does not express much joy, but nevertheless, thank you for your congratulations. And then another person comes up the stairs towards them. The imperial family watches and waits. Here is the announcement. Lady Greta is the bride of Crown Prince Theor. She makes a graceful curtsy. Now, the emperor makes a gesture with his hand, majestically inviting those gathered to enjoy the holiday. Theor and Greta, as expected, head to the center of the hall, followed by the first dance. The musicians, waiting for the moment, immediately begin to play a beautiful elegy. The guests gather around, waiting for the dance to begin, as if it were some kind of show. In truth, it is just a ritual. Watching this, the main character still admits that her brother is good-looking both now and when he grows up. And of course, she partly feels sorry for the little girl, Lady Greta, who is smiling happily now. She has no idea what awaits her in the future, how difficult the fate of the wife of such a scoundrel is. But the idea comes to give Lady Greta a club for their future wedding. By the way, it was not possible to take my club. Selma would only allow it to be taken over her own corpse. Surprisingly, Johann managed to persuade her to join him and they look good together. Then she goes on to talk about the safety of the king, recalling the events before her rebirth. Thinking about this, he believes that their ancestors were too arrogant about safety during the holidays. Then he glances at his younger brother and wonders whether genes are to blame for Theor's stupidity. This is incredibly funny and she giggles carefree, trying to hide this fun behind her palm. But it is important not to lose concentration. The killer must appear at the moment when the last melody plays. I remember that the enemy pretended to be a guest, and that's why I didn't remember his face. After what was done, the emperor himself was involved in the interrogation and execution, which is why the girl did not know the details. This complicates the situation. The princess bites her lower lip excitedly. However, Regina remembering the place where the attack took place is already important. In addition, the attacker pretended to be close to the emperor and hung around him. Meanwhile, below, Theor gracefully wraps his partner and deftly throws her back in a tilt. The hall is filled with enthusiastic claps of applause. The audience is delighted. Others have idle conversations at a distance, laughing and discussing someone they know or food. But Regina will not lose concentration and will prevent an assassination attempt on the emperor. Suddenly, she is called out and the princess is distracted from her own thoughts and plans. Turning around, the main character smiles radiantly. Sir Aaron approached her. She looks at his outfit, his hair, and seems to forget how to breathe properly there. My heart is literally jumping out of my chest. It's incredibly difficult to control myself. Not without effort, Regina makes her remember that it is important for her to get used to someone else's presence. Complimenting him, she states that he is especially beautiful, but Aaron states that he didn't really try. Such a statement makes the princess gloomy. It turns out that this is far from the maximum. Taking her partner's arm, the girl discusses how stunning his beauty will be if she really tries. Smiling at him again politely and openly, Regina asks the Duke's son for assistance and help for herself. Aaron readily replies that he will do his best not to become a hindrance. The next moment we see their couple taking a place in the center of the hall. They are spinning in a dance. Thin and beautiful fingers carefully cling to the broad shoulders of the fair-haired young man. His hands carefully hold his waist. Music and movements merge so harmoniously into a kind of symphony. The spectacle is incredibly beautiful. When a question is asked, you still hold on and immediately answer what is being said. And then the answer is heard that the eyes of all the ladies gathered here are directed at him. The main character explains how it turns out that his parents' story is so romantic, but he doesn't want to think about marriage. Aaron's parents met and fell in love without knowing each other. And from there, the fashion for masquerade balls began. The princess hastens to apologize for the inappropriateness of the question, but the blonde says that he is used to this and that he is not interested. Regina decides to clarify whether it is just the idea of marriage or a relationship at all, and in response she hears that he wants to be like his uncle. His uncle, he is also among the other guests, watching as the couple dances smoothly and aesthetically beautifully in the center. Eagle Vestine, governor known as the sharpest blade of the empire, defending the eastern borders. The main character recalls how one rainy summer day a message was delivered that in the south one of the governors had died in a battle with the rebels. Then Aaron himself took his uncle's place. He became governor immediately after the ceremony of his coming of age. But before the onset of winter, he suffered the same fate as Eagle Vestine. He died. Suddenly, the princess remembers that the events will begin this summer. Then he asks the question when the governor will go south and finds out that it will be tomorrow after the report to the emperor. Looking at the blonde, the girl thinks that she must stop this, otherwise Eagle and Aaron will die. If she succeeds, she will save the governor and keep Aaron himself until the winter. In addition, if they were alive, then it would be possible to counter the Sylvages. And themselves, uncle and nephew, will be more useful in maintaining the power of the imperial family. We must not allow him to report to the emperor. It is better to lose soldiers than such a great commander-in-chief. But what brings me out of my thoughts is that the music begins to fade, which means the dance is coming to an end. The girl finds the strength to say that this is of course obvious, but Aaron is an amazing person. To this phrase, Vestine Jr. politely bowed and replied that he often hears this. To himself, the blonde replies that he is somehow tired of hearing such words about himself. It seems that the princess is impressed by the sire's sincerity, and he himself notes that he does not often hear such words to his face. Therefore, in the next moment, the girl sees the light smile intended for her, and it can be rightly noted that this makes an incredible impression. Regina blushes. Moreover, she feels a clear and vivid attack of suffocation. It seems that this was too much for her. However, she says nothing more and turns away while Sir Aaron wonders if she is within herself. Clenching her fist, the princess realizes that she has weakened her internal defense. This is a violation of tactics. Again, I have to apologize to my dance partner for my behavior, but the answer is that I'm already used to it. Regina sighs and offers to go through, but before she can add it, someone calls out to her. Of course, she recognizes this voice, recognizes it from many. A shiver runs through her body. I remember the moment when it was this hateful voice that boldly ordered her to give up. The troublemaker asks why he was ignored, and Aaron looks interested. The princess's thin fingers clenched into a fist. She tries to restrain her emotions. She manages to pull herself together and politely, restrainedly inform her that she did not plan to ignore it. He finally answers that he hasn't seen the young Duke Sylvage for a long time. No matter how the brunette behaves on the outside, there is a storm of emotions inside her. Past terrible events are before her eyes. While Herman Sylvage bows and greets sedately and elegantly, he thinks maybe he should just kill him. Sir Vestine at this moment carefully observes how they react to each other. His gaze is so attentive it seems that he could understand something or is just imagining it. Herman says cheerfully that he was worried when he was instructed to choose another partner, but now he is calm, seeing that the princess is with Vestine. Carefully restraining herself, the girl replies that she is not sure she can trust his words. But Sylvage with a smile claims that he would not dare to lie to her highness. Imitating a laugh, the main character literally screams with anger in her own head at such impudence, knowing that he is a traitor. Regina thinks that one day she will finish him off with her own hands. At that moment, someone looms next to them. This distracts them from their conversation. The princess turns her head and notices another person. Now the moment has come. They have finally met. In front of her is the occultist Sylvage. Herman and the blonde girl are now standing opposite Regina and Aaron. The occultist's name is Anita Vadis. And even though this girl is only 1 year older than the princess, she controlled dozens of people. Before she was reborn, the main character believed that she was just her fiancé's mistress. The princess wonders if she should be the first to greet, and Anita immediately tries to correct herself, awkward. She introduces herself, the only daughter of the Viscounts of Vadis, says her name and curtsies. Regina, at this moment, is wondering how this girl was able to gain such power. The worst thing is that occultists are able to control the hearts of other people under the influence of such a spell. You will betray even the closest person without even understanding what you are doing. Her control of people is so skillful that they think that they themselves have changed their minds and do not realize that an influence has been made. The princess received this knowledge after escaping from the palace and thinks that she should learn more about Vadis. Currently, Anita is a ward of Sylvage County and is comfortable hiding her identity. But be that as it may, Regina is without a doubt 100% sure of one fact. She will be able to stop other people's plans this time. Turning to the blonde rather mockingly, he adds that something especially important happened between the Vadis and Sylvage families. Anita pretends to be a meek girl and hides behind Herman, squeezing his hand. But Regina cannot be deceived. She sees hidden danger in the gaze directed at herself. Looking at this, the princess wonders how she could not have noticed this before. While maintaining her position, the brunette wonders if they think that Vadis will do something bad. but the excuse sounds like they are simply afraid that Anita herself will make a mistake. And then, the princess mockingly asks if she really hasn't been taught ethics after spending so much time in the Duchy of Silvage. Herman immediately retorts that a lot of time was spent treating the disease, smiling politely. Regina notices that it may seem that she is mocking the guest, but in response there is a question of who could suggest such a thing. Then the brunette herself, as if thinking out loud, asks the same question, who? She remembers her past life again. A younger image of a young man appears before her eyes. The princess is so irritated by Herman's arrogant gaze, which he allowed to look at her. Against his will, he almost betrays his own irritation by clenching his hands into a fist. Irritation wins. But she is distracted, and the next moment a stranger's hand touches the girl's hand, squeezing it gently. This is Aaron, who brings the main character's hand to her face and offers to clear the room for other couples. And only now I remember that they are still not alone here, and where they are too. Regina agrees that others should be allowed to enjoy the banquet, and Vestine offers to accompany her. But before she leaves, the brunette says she hopes the other couple can enjoy the holiday too. Without saying goodbye, the princess leaves, accompanied by Aaron, leaving behind Herman and Anita hiding behind him. While one of the couples passes by the guests, they discuss them completely tactlessly. But this doesn't upset Regina. On the contrary, she's amused. She's waiting to see how they will react when the engagement is broken. The girl reasons that everyone will understand the change when she announces it, while Aaron gets attention. To this, the princess hastens to warn that new gossip awaits the young man because of such an undertaking, and talks about behavior. But Vestine accepts such words quite calmly and says that he is not against it. Regina squeezes the forearm offered to her tighter, thanks her, and immediately apologizes for the inconvenience. The people who gathered at the holiday do not lose sight of their couple. They look at them with such interest. They look at each other, make guesses, whisper rumors to each other that will soon spread among the nobility. But if the princess is indifferent to this, then Aaron turns to the crowd of people. The next moment, they are forced to look away and fall silent. They are staring too dangerously at them. But despite the fact that the looks directed at them are unpleasant, the main character made a decision about the engagement and its termination. The fair-haired young man who turns to his companion thinks that he is not only worried about himself. Suddenly, it seems even to himself, the young man gives a compliment to Her Highness about how strong she is. And then Regina concentrates all her attention on these words and smiles at him so sweetly and simply. Aaron is embarrassed by his outburst, asks him to forget what he said, and covers his mouth with his hand, looking away. Looking at the girl, the blonde reminds himself mentally that this is just a contract, nothing more. And let the brunette's soft smile beautifully Vestine thinks that he should control his own feelings. Regina thanks him for accompanying her, but suddenly the maid calls out to her and attracts attention. The main character turns to the maid and asks what's the matter. She sees that things seem to be bad. At this moment, she receives an answer. It's the prince, changing her face. The princess demands to be taken to where something bad happened. Having said goodbye to Aaron, Regina hurries after the servant, clearly not expecting to see anything good. And then there is the hysteria of the younger brother. He yells at the servants because they decide for him whether to drink for him or not. His bride is in tears, and he, not embarrassed by anything around him, kicks the servant and yells at him, showing himself in a completely impartial manner. Regina, who arrived in time, exhales nervously and feels tired from this whole situation, realizing that she will have to figure it out. Looking at such shameful behavior, she asks herself a question. It was he who she decided to save. It drives me crazy, the way the prince behaves like a hysterical woman, stamping his feet and squealing, his eyes bulging out of indignation. She calls him, and Theor turns around very angry, asking who dared to address him by name. But turning around, the prince sees his older sister and faints, freezing in obvious fear. Regina pats her palm with the baton and declares that the birthday boy should behave differently at the holiday. However, despite the smile, the sight of it should clearly give the boy goosebumps. There is enough threat in it. The boy immediately tries to justify that he was forbidden to drink, and the older sister immediately retorts that this is logical. He is too young. Staggering in fear, Theor reminds his sister that they are not alone here, fearing reprisals. But the brunette notices that the noise was made because of him. We see how the palm sharply and demonstrably turns into a fist, and it looks threatening. The prince purses his lips in fear and asks if they are going to hit him now. Regina grins frighteningly, defiantly putting her fist in front of her, and asks the answer question as he himself thinks. Now, Theor is simply losing the ability to speak coherently, scared and miserable. Turning sharply, the boy runs away, clearly giving in to the fact that he was defeated in this confrontation. Remaining in place, the princess looks after him, pursing her lips and frowning a little. Of course, it is clear that the main character is unhappy with the situation, her brother's behavior, and the noise. But the next moment she turns to those who were watching this whole scene with an equally frightening smile. Pretending to look extremely sweet and friendly, the girl clarifies whether they have seen anything now. The frightened nobles immediately rush to assure her that they saw nothing and try to insert compliments along the way. Satisfied with this reaction, Regina thinks that she likes this kind of power and should work on her authority with her younger brother. But of course, it also happens that the princess does not forget that an important moment for her is approaching. A quick but attentive glance looks around the holiday atmosphere, notices how the evening passes. The gaze switches to the scurrying servants, guests, and music, realizing what is about to happen. The killer must make a move, attack the emperor, commit an assassination attempt right in the middle of the holiday. Now he concludes that it is for the best that Aaron is far enough away and will not be harmed in the attack. It's just that the way Anita goes somewhere away doesn't go unnoticed either. After all, the blonde is all alone, unaccompanied. It's not clear where Herman himself has gone now. Noticing someone else's gaze on her, Anita turns around, looks embarrassed, but immediately smiles so radiantly. But just seeing this smile, Regina remembers another smile, the one that belonged to the occultist. This so abruptly takes the princess out of reality, shocks her, and takes her to the moment before her rebirth. It is at this moment that quite suddenly what the main character seemed to expect happens. An assassination attempt. The killer rushes straight through the hall with a blade at the emperor himself, screaming. But even if the attack shocks and stupefies the others, Regina herself was expecting it and rushes across. The emperor turns his gaze from the killer to his daughter, who rushes past him so sharply and rapidly. Therefore, when the killer attacks the emperor, Regina appears right in front of him, cutting off the path to her father. At the moment when the assassination attempt is about to take place, an obstacle appears in the way of the killer in the form of the main character. The killer growls with a dissatisfied grin because this obstacle was not part of the plans, or rather goes against them. But for a princess who should be meek and gentle, it's quite easy to stop the killer. Regina went through quite a few battles. The main character deftly dodges the poisoned blade, holding her skirt and making a graceful step backwards. And the next moment it shocks even more as it tears off a piece from the chair with a terrible grinding sound. The killer freezes in shock, looks at this, and does not know how to proceed. This behavior of the princess evokes obvious horror. It seems that she forgets about the attempt to attack again. And then, the one who seemed like a predator became a victim, because the time had come to answer for his actions. The society ladies squeal. The men stare in shock at the beating. Like the emperor, he certainly did not expect such behavior from his formerly flexible daughter. But this is a different Regina. This one considers the cruelty with which she beats the one who caused the death of her father in another life to be justified. The unfortunate killer lies on the carpet and can only moan and drool, seemingly completely defeated. Under the princess's foot lies the same poisoned blade that caused so many problems to the imperial family. At this moment, when the enemy is defeated, the crowd begins to whisper, trying to understand what they have witnessed. Collecting her thoughts, trying to calm down her excitement, the girl tries to realize that now is exactly the moment. Stomping menacingly and dangerously on the killer lying under his feet, Regina reports that she has a statement. Addressing the guests who had gradually come to life after the incident, the brunette seemed filled with excitement. Judging by the emperor's shocked look, he does not expect anything good from his daughter. However, it is to him that the main character turns first, holding out her palm and smiling, saying that she is breaking off the engagement. Next, we see the emperor and his daughter sitting in his office, the situation tense and tense. Regina wonders what angered her father more, the appearance of the killer or the dissolution of the engagement. But continuing the thought, he realizes that perhaps the antidote should continue to be given, and tomorrow a scandal will definitely arise in the capital. The princess expects that the matter will end with a little swearing because she is very tired, and the emperor finally speaks to her. But he doesn't shout at her sharply as expected, but calmly and somehow anxiously asks why her daughter did this. Frowning a little, Regina, who did not expect such a reaction, tries to clarify what exactly we are talking about. Maybe about an engagement. Here the cry of the emperor can already be heard, declaring that the question is not at all about the engagement. The girl looks back nervously and wonders what the question from her father is about. She wonders whether the emperor might decide that she herself set up the assassination attempt. Having gathered her strength, she asks the reason for her anger, ready to apologize if anything happens. Only the father exclaims her name, and it seems that emotions are simply devouring him from the inside. Finally, the man asks why she personally tried to stop the killer. This is shocking. The girl frowns and wonders why this bothered the emperor so much. It's unfair. That's what the main character thinks because he's angry for saving his life. Jumping up, Regina tries to explain that he was in danger, and she considered it her duty to protect him. Only here, the emperor puts his hand down on the table with a roar and jumps up too. The man looks at his daughter and declares that no father would put his own safety above the safety of his children. Hearing this, the main character sits back down and laughs. And, of course, she asks again if she understood correctly that the reason for her anger was concern for her. The emperor wearily rubs the bridge of his nose and sits back on the sofa, sighs, and confirms this conclusion. The daughter agrees that any father would worry about his daughter, but there is one thing. Looking straight into the man's eyes, Regina asks the question, since when does her father give a damn about her? The dark-haired man clearly did not expect such mockery. He leans forward a little and looks confused. However, Regina continues, looking at her father with the same direct look, unreadable regarding emotions. It reminds me of the rather harsh and cruel words that I heard myself. His Majesty does not have a daughter. Continuing her reasoning, she remembers that all her attempts as a daughter were unsuccessful, so it seemed that she didn't care. Feeling extremely guilty towards her, the emperor looks away and says that she is his daughter. But the girl just chuckles in response, declaring that they realized it too late. The man is shocked by such strong changes in her. It seemed to him that despite the fact that so much time had passed, there was still a chance to fix everything. Regina reports that she is tired, and if there is nothing more to say, then perhaps she will go to rest. And he leaves because the emperor does not find the right and correct words now, and the girl notices someone in the corridor of the palace. She certainly did not expect such a meeting, but she no longer looks distant or gloomy, on the contrary. Coming closer, the main character greets Sir Aaron, who looks at her thoughtfully. Only this is the second person this evening who asks a terribly annoying question. Why did she do that? Looking away, the girl says that she could not allow the emperor to be threatened, but the young man states that she should have been next to him. In a shocking phrase, however, the princess states that she did not expect such a turn, and the sire carefully takes her hand away from her face, takes it into his carefully, throwing her into panic. He brings her palm to his face and says that the security at the holidays is too weak, and from now on she should not leave his side. The girl chuckles coquettishly, awkwardly, and says that in the future they will be more closely connected and the sire will not be able to get rid of her. But such a simple and careless answer does not suit the young duke. However, she immediately volunteers to accompany Her Highness to her chambers, which Regina does not refuse. But, she immediately adds, suddenly the attack shocked her so much that she grabbed his strong man's shoulder, but Aaron asks not to go that far. Turning around, the young man gives her an artificially stern look. So serious. But the girl just smiles, showing that she's just teasing him a little. However, already to herself, Regina realizes that the situation is somehow becoming more complicated. At this moment, Anita laments that the assassination plan has failed, the engagement is broken, and it seems that the princess has changed. When asked if he knows the reasons for this, Herman says that he needs more time to analyze everything. But the girl certainly cannot be satisfied with such an answer. She asks again about the time. The next moment, she grabs his chin and threateningly pulls him closer, throwing the young man into fear. Experiencing wild fear and freezing, as if petrified, he pronounces another name, Evaldina. The blonde girl looks into his eyes without even blinking. The tension increases 100-fold. And then he touches the young man's forehead with his finger, performing witchcraft and complaining that others are easier to control than him. Now it becomes clear to us who the bigger villain is, and that Duke Silvage is under the influence of an occultist. Moving her whole body towards the young man, using a spell, she asks him to quickly find out why the princess has changed so much. He twirls the beautiful blue strands of his hair around his finger and asks him not to disappoint her anymore. And the representative of the majestic Duchy of Silvage answers colorlessly and humbly, "Yes, madam." Grinning, the blonde adds that it should be so as not to cause her real anger. And then he leaves Herman behind him as he walks away, forcing him to look at his back with an anxious look. The young man, left alone on the spacious balcony, bites his lip, plunging into his thoughts. It seems that the one who caused so much suffering, in Regina's opinion, is himself under someone else's oppression. Is it possible that he really did not do everything that happened next of his own free will? Now we are watching two knights. The red-haired one asks if Johann is serious, and he says that he is only fulfilling his mistress's request. Their glances intersect. The fair-haired guy gives out a caustic mockery, and the second one is wary. And then he completely foolishly demands to surrender, but the red-haired one does not agree with this, screaming, Jessie shouts that now even the prince and princess call him lady, but the blonde declares that he himself is to blame for this. They ask Johan to take pity on him because he has already regretted what happened so many times, but someone is heard calling out. The prince, it seems that it is he, calls his night lady, which causes wild indignation. Theor calls Jessie and asks him to stop someone. You can imagine his cute face in tears and he is scared. But the princess's voice is heard. She demands her brother to return and accept his punishment with honor. Now the reasons are clear. Johan holds Jessie, does not allow him to help his master, at the request of the princess, of course. But the blonde man notices that this will not end with the murder of a blood relative, and if he lets Jessie in, he will also be beaten. Frightening more, Johan says that probably Her Majesty's baton hits harder than Theor's fists, but he himself has never received it. And he adds that if he comes in right now, he will receive it from both the princess and the prince, who is definitely angry. Seeing that the words have an effect, he adds that there is no point in confronting Regina and Jessie is looking for excuses. Tarahan fearfully decides not to interfere in the skirmish. The doors open an hour later. At this moment, 3 knights, Johan, Jessie, and Ser Aaron, enter the hall. It seems that the red-haired young man is still tense, and they see the princess sitting calmly with a cup of tea, and her younger brother is lying on the floor, clearly having survived the beating. Coming closer, Aaron declares that you shouldn't lie on the ground for a long time. You might get sick. It seems that the prince is exhausted. He can't even get angry properly. However, he is indignant that this happened because of Vestein's lateness. While the blonde greets Regina in the background, Theor has clearly decided to take it out on his knight, rushing at him like a wild cat. The girl calls to join her to get away from the direct rays of the sun, chirps politely and politely. He says that a delicious and healthy tea has been brewed, which you should definitely try. It is good for the skin. Regina declares that his beauty needs to be protected internationally and packs more tea for Aaron on the road. But suddenly the fair-haired young man looks extremely thoughtful and gloomy. He asks how many people will be distracted from his face by concentrating on the gift. The main character confirms his guesses. At that time, the maids at a distance from this couple are watching, and one of them is clearly impressed by such a conversation. The princess politely asks if there were any incidents when the sire left. He replies that there were none. At the mention of Uncle Duke, Regina remembers that she was going to talk to her father about him. But surprisingly, the last conversation made a strong impression. He refused the meeting. The girl asks additional questions about the governor and his plans. Aaron replies that the audience took place, but there is still a question with the troops. When Her Majesty learns that Duke Vestein wished to stay, she is surprised and freezes. Turning around, he asks to clarify this point. But the blonde says that his uncle said that he wanted to have fun. This news clearly has a positive effect on the girl's condition, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Indeed, in fact, thanks to this, she will not have to report bad news to the Emperor himself. Perhaps it's enough for him that every morning she prepares her healing tea for her father. The main goal of the main character is to deal with her enemies. After this, put the younger brother on the throne and leave the palace. That's the whole plan. Then you will be able to live only for yourself, calmly, and bury your thoughts about politics deeply and for a long time. Get rid of eternal stress and all these worries. Take a good rest from all worries. The servant's address pulls her out of her thoughts. The young man attracts her attention by addressing her politely. This is not her servant. The princess looks down and notices the gloves. They belong to the uniform of the Emperor's servants. This is exactly what she asks what the Emperor's servants are doing here. The moment comes to tense up. And further, the servant reports that His Highness the Emperor ordered to meet with Aaron, Regina, and Theor after the fencing lesson. After the lesson, the trio changed into clothes more suitable for the visit and are already heading to the audience. Theor, as always, looks dissatisfied and asks the servant girl what is the reason for calling them. The servant replies that he does not know the details, which causes even greater dissatisfaction with the young prince. An attempt is made to pull him back, saying that he is too noisy, but Theor again scolds and screams. Using her intimidating aura, the elder sister states that the servant probably really does not know anything because the Emperor will not report to her. The brother agrees. It is quite logical that if the Emperor summoned you, then you should obey and not ask questions. Such foundations seem absurd to the girl. She would like to change them in the future, if the opportunity arises. And then the princess realizes that they are going to an audience not only with her brother, but also with Vestein. To her surprise, she also realizes that the sire is walking right behind her. But before, she had paranoia that people walking behind her were capable of harm. These anxieties suffocated and did not let go of the young girl, causing so much excitement and fear. In such a situation, They could have taken advantage of a moment of weakness and stuck a knife in the back. This thought is disturbing. Surprisingly, now in a similar situation where Aaron is walking behind her, it's easier for her, although it's not easy at times with Una, Selma, and Johan. The princess is trying to understand the reason why Sir Aaron's steps sound different. After all, in fact, all of the above are her comrades in arms, but there may be something special in this blonde. What if then the most special thing is that his face asks Her Majesty a question and his eyes light up? Theor notices the change in his sister's expression and asks about it out loud, which is confusing. But when the boy tries to add something else, he is immediately kicked in the back to make him move forward faster. The brother offendedly asks why they are beating him, but Regina says that she did not intend to do this. The blonde looks at them incomprehensibly, and now the doors of the throne room open in front of them. You can see that the emperor is already waiting for them. The whole trio comes closer and bows, politely greeting the royal person. The emperor waves his hand in response and looks calmly at each person who enters. Suddenly, he declares that the fencing lesson lasted too long, if anything. But in response to him, there is a statement that it was he himself who set the time of the lessons. While the conversation between the emperor and the princess continues, a young servant approaches another, older one, and whispers something in her ear. It seems there is news that amuses the boy, but the woman sighs tiredly. She politely intervenes during a pause and says that they have already arrived. Regina wonders what's going on, who her father would want to call, and waits tensely. The servants, having received orders from the emperor, rush to open the doors of the throne room again. Hearing this, the princess turns her head and looks at who has arrived here. The next moment, she was completely warped by who exactly she saw in front of her. This is Herman Silvage. He smiles and bows politely when greeting the emperor. Next to him is Anita Vadis, who makes the required curtsy according to etiquette, also greeting the ruler. At this time, the main character is almost breathing fire, wondering what this couple is doing here. The daughter looks at her father with a wild look. The emperor assumes that everyone is interested in the reason why they were gathered. Of course, Regina responds and says that she is really interested in the reason. The man continues, starts talking about yesterday's accident. The princess suggests what this refers to, an attack or a divorce. She voices the fact that she still doesn't understand how the situation yesterday and their gathering here today are connected. Then the emperor declares that if the imperial family is threatened, then the number of guards must be increased. This is the law, but Regina falls into despair when she assumes what her father is going to do. And in this case, the speech continues. The protection of the imperial family lies with the two duchies. The news is not encouraging because in one of those families there was a traitor. Just think, protection from the traitor. Ironic. But the scoundrel Hermann looks so happy from such news, and this Anita is completely shining with cuteness. Barely restraining herself from screaming, Regina clarifies why she must come to terms with this. Her father answers her that this is the law. You need to honor it. That is why there are two duchies in the empire, by the way. Such a situation literally destroys the princess. It is surprising that no matter what happened in a past life, such security was not assigned to the most important crown prince. Beside herself with anger, Her Highness calls out to Theor, who immediately blushes bashfully because he flinches from the look. But he quickly pulls himself together and looks at his sister angrily and does not look away. Each of them now seems to be thinking about their own things, experiencing a small storm of emotions, but they both do not want what is promised to them. Having thought about everything hastily and judged what was what, Regina realizes that there is no other choice left. The emperor is already beginning to speak further, but suddenly the daughter interrupts and says that she does not want this. The father tries to explain that now is not the time for elections, what to do, but the girl blames him for wasting the time of good soldiers protecting those who do not need it. In fact, she expresses general thoughts, hers and her brother's, who clings to her, asking if she has gone too far. But the father looks searchingly, trying to understand the soundness of the arguments presented. Now he is thinking that he could support his daughter, but there are other nuances. There is no other way out in order to maintain peaceful relations between the duchies. Regina must marry Duke Silvage. Rising from the throne, the man looks at her sternly and seems to tolerate no more arguments. He calls her by her full name, Regina d'Alper, reports that this is the will of her emperor. The matter is serious. By the decision of the emperor, it was decided that Regina would be under the protection of Herman Silvage. While Aaron Vestine would guard the prince, that was the order. No amount of arguing would help. Further, the emperor adds that you cannot go outside until the issue of the attack is resolved, and fencing lessons are prohibited. Regina understands that now, no matter how much she wants to, she cannot say a word in defiance because it is not her father who is speaking to her, but the emperor. Next, the man turns to the blonde, which gives off a sweet smile, short and gentle. For the main character, the reason why she was called is revealed. Anita revealed the secret of the family. The truth serum. This blonde occultist is given orders to prepare a truth serum. While the emperor thinks he looked cool, his daughter is incredibly indignant at this decision. Regina wonders where her father has so much confidence in them, how it happened. How can the emperor trust this Vedas that it will not be poison that will be prepared, but a serum? However, the audience is over, and the four leave the hall and go to the chambers of the princess and prince. At the same time, the occultist left first. She was accompanied by the emperor's chief physician, promising to provide everything necessary for the serum. Thinking about recent events, the main character laments that the consequences of the attack should be dealt with as quickly as possible. After all, in fact, she became the victim of a terrible irony. Everything did not go according to plan. She will now have to be close to the one who was the instigator of the assassination attempt, this traitor. But there is also good in this order of the emperor. She turns back. There is no need to worry about Theor as long as he is under the protection of Sir Aaron. This is at least some kind of pleasant addition. The princess tells Herman, without even turning around, that she wants to speak with Servestein so that he can move on without her. But Silvage makes an attempt to challenge this order and says that he cannot do this. But Regina glares at him irritably and declares that he has no right to interfere in her personal life. This was not in the emperor's order. The princess's rudeness doesn't seem to bother Herman, as he looks back with a warm smile. Glancing at the blue-haired traitor again, the girl heads towards the blonde, calling out to him. Her Highness puts out her palm. The Duke sinks lower, bending down so that it is comfortable to whisper in his ear. And then, Regina whispers a request to help make sure that German and Anita do not rub shoulders with Theor. Also, he asks Sira Jessa to convey such an order. Aaron agrees. He understands. Then, the princess turns her gaze to Theor, who is standing nearby, looking at him thoughtfully. Her beloved younger brother, so meek and naive now, looks back. The main character thinks that even despite the fact that in the future he may become a trash prince, she will still always love him. Therefore, her next order sounds sincere. She orders to take care of Theora. This time, the older sister will take good care of the fate of the younger one. She makes an oath to herself. With a wave of her hand, Regina watches as Theor and Aaron leave, watching with a smile. And then she snorts with irritation whether it is necessary for Herman to walk behind her. The guy notices that this is necessary. The main character is not happy about this, but further says that she plans to go to the underground prison. What's surprising is that Silvage doesn't look at all like someone he just broke off his engagement with. On the other hand, neither his father nor the emperor made any official statements. Therefore, Regina asks what the Duke said about breaking off the engagement, to which Herman speaks about a one-sided breakup. That is, the entire initiative comes from the princess. She gets angry and the question is repeated, but it seems that the blue-haired one intends to avoid answering directly. Or this is not entirely true. Feeling anxious, the girl asks what is meant. Herman, at this moment, declares that their engagement is a contract concluded between the duchy and the emperor. They cannot cancel it of their own free will. To restrain herself, the main character bites her lip because she is overwhelmed by despair. And then he goes on the defensive, asks about the friendship of Herman and someone else, and in hints reproaches him for treason. The blue-haired young man just smiles, says that he treats Anita like a child and sister, adding that these are just rumors. But Regina laughs and says what Vadis meant. She's surprised that he thought about her. This puzzles Silvage. He looks without that same calm smile. And the princess adds that there are not always rumors in the palace, and she turns away and ends the conversation. Further, she adds that she will certainly break off the engagement. It's a matter of time, but he should know. While Herman politely states that he hopes that Regina's opinion will be taken into account, the girl herself thinks that he needs to get him to talk before the occultist makes her move. Looking at her reflection in the window, Her Majesty remembers the pain that comes from losing her loved ones. This is not what she wants to feel again, but for now they just move on next to each other. And now we see a set of ingredients in different bottles and cones, everything neatly arranged on the shelves. The chief doctor asks Anita, whose eyes are burning, whether she has all the ingredients. While the occultist examines everything, the healer introduces her to Percy Durantius. The girl looks surprised, says that she assumed that he would see him off and leave, but the guy says that he was told differently. The blonde smiles sweetly, listening to the young man's speeches. She seems so sweet to look at. Then she asks if she can ask for help, and then Percy says that he is ready to help. And Anita shows him the list and says that she needs a list of certain herbs. But when a guy loses his vigilance, a neat thin finger touches his forehead and a spell is cast. Smiling, the occultist uses magic. It seems that she does not need much strength to do this. and then, using his influence, he asks if the doctor knows where the Vimaldi root is located. Percy replies that he knows, but to obtain it he must get Ser Darian's permission because it is poisonous. A thin hand gently touches the young man's face. Anita calls him by name, seeming to enchant him more. And then she makes her look into her eyes, gets carried away by magic, and asks her to get her the Vimaldi root. The next moment we see the chief healer leaving with a promise to get what he needs. The girl giggles contentedly. She is glad that she chose Silvage and how easy it was to get into the palace. But the next moment something happens. The occultist experiences a bright flash of pain. And so it is, staggering. Anita clutches her heart as if a lightning strike is piercing her chest. Covered in cold sweat, the girl calls on her own strength because she needs to hold out a little longer. Suddenly the doctor comes to her, asking if she is okay, worried. The occultist replies that there is no reason to worry. She is fine, thinking that there will be no other chance. Turning to the girl, the blonde introduces herself and politely asks someone else's name. We don't know the answer, but we see how her finger is raised for a new portion of the magic that it will create. Afterwards, we can see the vaults of the underground prison that the princess recently mentioned. In the background conversation, they ask how long the killer has been in this state. Now we know that the attacker was a girl. It seems that Regina is the one asking about the condition of the killer, who looks pretty beaten up. During the negotiations, there is a discussion of whose fault it is and in what condition the detainee is in. The criminal, raising her head, sees everything blurry and out of focus until someone's foot stomps in front of her. And then the killer is suddenly lifted up by the hair and pulled back so that his beaten face is visible. Now you can see more clearly that in front of her is the princess, Knight Johann and Herman Silvage. Regina asks if the detained girl was tortured. The guard reports that no, they haven't done it yet. And here, Herman mockingly asks if it was she who beat the attacker with a chair made of strong Darkon wood. The beaten and swollen face of the unfortunate killer speaks volumes more eloquently than any answer. However, she watches precisely the girl's eyes because memories from the past arise. Those people who were close to her had a similar look before they committed treason against her. This gives rise to certain thoughts regarding the whole situation as a whole. The princess thinks that this is the influence of an occultist who is able to influence people and control them. People under such influence do not realize their own betrayal and charms. They behave naturally. She once lost many loved ones because of this. In general, this killer has already been left to the mercy of fate. The occultist does not need her. The only question is how to remove the hypnosis. And even if it is useless to go deeper into this, you still need to be convinced of something. She asks what the girl thinks about the Emperor, Bernard Alper, raising her chin with a baton. And the next moment, the red-haired girl lunges forward, madly growling. Regina pulls away. Behind her, Johann is clearly worried for the safety of Her Highness. While they are trying to restrain the criminal, the guard asks what the princess did, but she replies that she herself doesn't understand. After all, the point is that she was able to note that everyone who was under the influence of such spells produced something similar. They all had the same aggressive reaction to the mention of the Emperor's name. It was just not clear why none of the families, neither Silvage nor Vadis, were in any way connected with the first Emperor. The main character plunges into thought and tries to guess the reason for this reaction. And then the guard begins to speak, saying that since His Majesty himself has taken up the search, they will certainly find the enemy. Regina, although she doesn't answer out loud, agrees with these words, although she privately regrets that she didn't achieve anything by coming down here. But he immediately notes that Herman again surprises with his behavior. He behaves too calmly for someone who can be caught at any moment. She's also annoyed by the fact that she can't stand this foggy look. And then it dawns on her. This is not visible unless you look closely, however. All victims of the occultists have a clouded look. If you remember, when Her Majesty met Herman, his gaze was pure. Is it possible that he is also being influenced? Previously, Regina believed that the occultist was following Silvage's orders. So what if everything was wrong? Now she's even ashamed that before, she didn't try to suggest such an option. Squeezing the baton, the girl turns to him and decides to try a new experiment. She asks what Herman thinks about the first Emperor, ready to test her assumptions. Turning, Silvage looks stunned by such a question, which he clearly did not expect. Regina waits, ready for a possible attack, just to see exactly how she will react. And so, the blue-haired young man opens his mouth. The girl waits excitedly, almost without breathing. But Herman suddenly only replies that he considers His Majesty an outstanding person. The princess does not give up. She still looks attentively, pushing her with a question to continue. But the young man continues to speak only words of praise regarding the Emperor. Regina believes that she probably invented something unnecessary for herself, noticed something that actually wasn't there. But the girl is distracted from her thoughts by a strange sound, something breaking with a terrible grinding sound. The princess turns her head towards the sound. She is frightened by what she sees. Probably this will not be forgotten for a long time. With heartbreaking screams, the killer girl rushes at her, seemingly wanting to tear her apart with her own hands. With sharp jerks, the red-haired criminal rushes forward, wanting to reach the princess. Johann, screaming, lunges. He wants to protect his mistress at any cost. However, the killer rushed too quickly. She was rushing like an animal at incredible speed. The next moment, Regina herself hits the attacker on the hand that was reaching out to her. It's just that it seems that the criminal doesn't care. She looks with the same hazy gaze. And then, to the princess's shock, he makes a new attempt to attack, lunges forward. What happens next is that a cloak is thrown over her highness and a terrible sound is heard. The last thing Regina can see is Silvage's back and the blood splattering out. Johann turns to her, asks how she is. The girl asks to remove the cloak, but she is denied this. And then the knight simply leads the princess out of prison along a long stone staircase. Already there, her highness removes the cloak from her head and asks to at least tell her, since she was not allowed to see what happened. Johann walks next to him, frowns a little, and reports that Sir Silvage struck with a sword. The killer is not yet dead, but will probably die soon from loss of blood. Regina allows the maids to examine her while she wonders how this happened, whether the chains were broken by the occultist's spell. She is shocked by what happened and does not even react to the knight's questions or apology. Although after, it suggests whether this was done on purpose to silence the killer forever. The next morning, the princess sits in her chambers, still silent and thoughtful from yesterday. Suddenly, Una announces that Lady Anita has requested an audience with the princess. The girl's voice sounds excited. And if Selma tries to challenge even the idea of allowing the meeting, then Her Majesty orders him to let her in with a wave of her hand. It seems strange that Vadis decided to come to her immediately after what happened. Perhaps she was planning something. To the bewilderment of the maids, Regina reports that she cannot ignore the request for a visit. Demonstrating with all his appearance that he is in perfect order, he orders the guest to be admitted. And so we see Anita Vadis in front of us. She meekly looks from under her brows at the princess. Her Majesty does not respond in the most friendly manner, trying to understand what she is up to. Ignoring unnecessary idle conversations, she immediately asks the question why she came, and then the blonde says that she was informed about what happened. He puts a certain box on the table and says that these are medicinal herbs with a calming effect. Selma accepts the gift. Her Majesty thanks and clarifies whether this is what she came for. Then Anita, it seems, is trying to find words, revealing that indeed there is another reason. Under the sharp gaze of the princess, the girl, choosing her words, says that she knows that the criminal has died. You can tell from her that it is very difficult for her to find words. She is so meek and humble. But Regina cannot be fooled. She stops the moments when the conversation begins to wander. Then Vadis continues, saying that she arrived at the palace to produce a truth serum, however, if the murderer died then. The princess herself interrupts her, declares that such a serum is no longer needed, and asks if the blonde has arrived to say goodbye. Immediately, Anita says that this is not the reason, that she was misunderstood, and tries to continue excitedly. She adds that if possible, she would like to get closer to Her Highness. It takes a lot of effort for Regina to resist, because she can't react to such arrogant words from someone who is a traitor to her. She makes an attempt to explain that despite the desire for rapprochement, explains that this can be misunderstood. Vadis immediately rushes to deny the situation about the rumors. Playing out her role further, she reports that Herman treats her like a little sister, and people were inventing unnecessary things for themselves. This picture makes Vadis incredibly happy, because what kind of older brother would allow himself to force his younger brother to control and kill people? Inwardly, Her Majesty wonders if this girl really expects her to show favor. At another long phrase about the fact that there is nothing between her and German, Regina stops her and says that she believes that there is nothing between them. Beaming with a smile, Anita starts talking about the engagement, but Regina immediately stops her and informs her that the engagement will be cancelled anyway. Stuttering as befits the role, Vadis asks about the reason for this decision. This irritates the main character, but perhaps it's just in time. The time has come for her to make a move, smiling and saying out loud that since it's so interesting, she'll tell you the reason. The truth is, says Her Highness, that she has fallen in love, and this makes the occultist freeze in shock. Then it's Regina's turn to play the role. She imitates the almost insane insanity of a girl in love. With her arms folded and her eyes sparkling, she utters phrases about butterflies, love, feelings, chirping like a canary. On the other hand, the fact that we are talking about Aaron, and he is incredibly handsome and not that indifferent to the princess, helps her to give compliments and show feelings. Without reacting to calls, Regina continues to say that this is her first and such a strong love. She doesn't care even if it's not mutual. Her loving, sweet, and awe-filled babble shocks Anita, who looks at her as if she were a real madman. And then, turning to Vadis, Her Highness begins to say phrases that she remembered from the last novel she read. He also adds a phrase that Johan says quite often when mentioning Selma. The effect on Anita was profound. Perhaps you should thank your knight for the phrase. Next, Regina touches the occultist and asks if she loved someone so much. And then he adds that he hopes that someday the girl will be able to experience such a strong feeling. Having pulled away, the princess smiles more calmly, looking at the guest for her. This is her first, albeit small, victory. Next, we see Vadis walking along the corridors of the palace. The audience with the princess is over. And now the occultist argues that the one who bears his blood spoke to her about love. He remembers something and thinks it's true. Blinded by love, he's ready to do crazy things and destroy everything. After all, she could get rid of him with her own hands. Watch as she begs God to save him. And she even created it, reaching into her pocket and carefully taking out a certain package. And inside there is poison prepared by her, which kills anyone at the request of the owner. But now it's pointless because the killer is no longer there, and this saddens the occultist. She remembers the situation played out in front of her by the princess. Other people's phrases sound in her head. Words are heard. Venomously, the blonde invites her to enjoy her love while she can. After all, according to Anita's thoughts, she doesn't have long to love and enjoy this. She wonders whether she will be able to talk about love when she falls at her feet begging. And again, the occultist is struck by a sudden attack. Her chest is filled with pain like a flash. Adjusting her hair, Vadis wonders if the pain in her heart is due to the fact that she charms people too often. So far, she has taken control of hypnosis in only 2 people in the palace, however, this will not be enough. Because there are more guards, but on the other hand, it's too dangerous to take risks. You might get caught. Although, if everything goes according to plan, then it will be possible to win without using spells. And according to her thinking, this is enough to wipe this place off the face of the earth. At the same time, in the security office, the tense atmosphere could be cut with a sword. The captain of the Imperial Guard, Albert, breaks into a scream he doesn't know what to do with the fact that Herman took and killed the prisoner. Vice Captain Gibson says that they say that Duke Sylphage protected the princess. But the eldest is dissatisfied, but he protected the princess, but he did not need to kill the captive. He demands to look at the pile of documents that now clutter his desk because of what happened. There are a lot of them, one might say critical, and there is an awkward pause between them. And then he complains that he can't figure it out. Then he visits His Majesty and informs him that he is leaving his post. Gibson mutters under his breath that he is surprised. His head sometimes works as it should, and brushes off Albert's attempt to ask again. And then an audience with the Emperor, where the captain of the Imperial Guard reports on what happened. Albert says he must take responsibility for this, but he is told to go. The Emperor continues, nothing can be done, since the murderer is dead, gives instructions to find out how she got to the ball. The captain of the Imperial Guard did not expect such a conclusion for himself, as evidenced by the expression on his face. By the way, this bewilderment does not leave him later when he tells Gibson about what happened. While the vice captain tries to pacify him and says that he will buy the captain beer, Albert believes that he should go back and insist. He tries to explain that he should insist on his removal, but the younger one assures him that he shouldn't. After all, the arguments that Albert puts forward are so-so, and therefore he calmly rejects them. Reminds me of what the princess did at the banquet and announced the termination of the engagement. The captain of the guard seems to be immersed in this memory, trying to understand his attitude towards such nobility. He is trying to make it clear that Her Majesty truly hates him since she did such a thing. I also remember the fact that it is believed that Herman is cheating on the princess. Albert sympathizes with this. Immediately, he wonders whether he should break into the Duchy of Sylphage and defeat them. But then Gibson again remembers his possible resignation. It seems that the more reserved vice captain manages to appeal to logic and suggests returning to work. At this time, the princess asks Una what about the rumors about her now, and if she wanted to answer as it is, then right there, under Selma's menacing gaze, she timidly mutters something inaudible. But the princess herself is happy with this turn. She believes that the rumors should have appeared due to the unceremonious breaking of the engagement and the beating of the killer with a chair. But an oppressive silence hangs in the room, and the princess freezes in surprise. Turning to the maid, she asks, because she didn't say anything while Selma makes a sign that she shouldn't. This makes Regina puff out her cheeks in irritation. Apparently, she didn't try hard enough if they didn't start talking about her changes. Taking her cup of tea, Her Highness decides that it is worth stirring up talk about herself. Turning her head, the girl takes a short glance at the door, knowing what is behind them. Herman and Johan are behind them. You should get rid of Silvage as quickly as possible in order to restore communication between the knight and Selma. Then she asks Selma how the investigation is going, and she is told that nothing significant has been found so far. Of course, since the servants were under hypnosis, it is not surprising that nothing was found. The second question is whether the Emperor made any statements regarding her engagement, and the answer is again negative. No. Then she chirps whether the engagement will be broken if she breaks into the Duchy of Silvage and throws chairs at them. Selma says that in that case she will tear out her tongue and die. Regina notices the maid's desire for violence, and she says that she is holding back, but wants to make it clear how serious she is. The princess then remarks that she respects her and needs to ask about an audience with her father. When asked by Selma about the reason for the visit, he says that he wants to throw a chair at him, and this causes a new outburst of indignation from the maid. Continuing to calmly sip fragrant tea, the girl declares that she is joking, but the servant has doubts about it. There is a knock on the door, and they say that the direction is from the Emperor himself, and the visitor is allowed to enter. When the door opens, Herman enters the princess's chambers, walking straight towards her. The next moment, the Emperor's maid stands in front of the girl, looking at her. And behind Regina herself, Herman and Johan took their places, which they now protect from any possible threat. Her Highness wonders whether the Emperor wants to see her, and privately wonders whether he is the true enemy. However, further, we see that the princess was simply invited to a joint dinner. Both her father and brother are here. With a sigh, the girl decides that she can endure such an event, even despite the fact that Silvage is nearby. But there is a detail that unspeakably outrages the main character, such an annoying detail. She doesn't understand what this damned occultist is doing here, at her family's table. Now everyone is sitting at the table, the imperial family, the Emperor, Theor, Regina, their defenders Herman and Aaron, and suddenly Anita. Suddenly the silence is broken by a fork suddenly thrown onto the table. In the oppressive silence, it sounds loud. In rude form, Theor demands to stop stalling for time and start the conversation now. Regina is clearly delighted by this. Her little brother seems so cute to her. True, the Emperor immediately tries to correct and rein in, informing him that this is an official dinner. Theor declares that everyone understands that there should be a conversation here, notices that the sister has already finished the meal. She agrees with him, and then he glances at the opposite side of the table, clearly feeling the tension getting stronger. After all, Aaron, Anita, and Herman are sitting there and looking at her with no less interest. Then, the Emperor finally declares that they have decided to stop the investigation into the attempted murder. The princess says that there are no more clues left, so it turns out that it's all over. And this is true, she did not expect any result from the investigation, although she knew about the culprits. There are only 2 problems left, which are currently sitting in front of her. Nevertheless, the Emperor continues, they should be vigilant. Here the prince boils, shouting that this could have been conveyed through the servants. The father shouts at Theor, and he is indignant. Why shout? He can be heard perfectly well. It's just funny for Regina to see this. It seems that Bernard is faced with the fruits of his upbringing. However, she gets up from her seat, approaches her brother, and looks expressively at her brother. He immediately breaks into a cold sweat. That smile on his sister's face does not bode well. And even though they are at a small distance, Theor can easily imagine how they could beat him. While the prince capitulates, the princess asks if she understands correctly that now they do not need Sarah's Herman and Aaron. The latter looks at her somehow especially piercingly, but the girl herself does not notice this. And he continues to ask whether Lady Anita will leave the palace anytime soon now that it's all over. And then a hand suddenly rises. It seems that a question has appeared that the occultist is about to ask. Calling attention to herself, the girl says that she would like to say something now. The Emperor is distracted from his conversation with his daughter and turns his head, paying attention to Vadis. She asks to be allowed to stay in the palace to learn more about healing herbs from the doctors. The man clarifies whether the girl discussed this issue with the chief physician Darien, and she assures that he agrees with the consent of the Emperor. Yes, it seems that with her charm, this girl can convince anyone of what she wants. Regina intervenes and says that in this way the doctor was trying to refuse the request. Otherwise, he would have come with the request himself. Oh, it seems that Anita did not expect this. And all because Her Majesty cannot be deceived by this little face. The princess consolidates the result, turns to her father, seeking confirmation of her words. The Emperor agrees with the logic of this. So this traitor's plan collapsed. She could only bite her lip in frustration. Her Highness thinks that she will not allow either the traitor, Herman, or the damned occultist to stay in the palace. Stopping Anita's attempt to argue, Regina diverts her father's attention and asks why they were all called together in the end. Here, the Emperor reports that despite the fact that there is no longer a need for protection, she will still spend time with Herman. This news plunges the princess into shock. She looks at her father in horror, not believing what is happening. At least 3 times a week, this is the decree. The girl squeezes her fork, holding back a burst of anger, deciding to clarify the reason for this. The father continues that despite their long engagement, they hardly saw each other. It seems that the Emperor is going to continue, however. Regina does not hold back and jumps up from her seat. And then she screams with all her strength that she refuses this, and that she has already said that she has broken off the engagement. The Emperor declares that he has heard that between Lady Anita and Sir Herman, there is no connection other than almost family. But Regina continues that this was not the reason to end the engagement, and the question arises why. At this moment, Theor looks in shock at the militant sister, who states that she was unhappy from the very beginning. Then she had to obey. Bernard declares that now his order has not changed. But the princess says that she has changed, and she refuses. There are words that she should marry Silvage, but when asked why, they only say that it is necessary. A wave of the hand knocks over a glass of wine. A beautiful dress is stained, but no attention is paid to this. Because Regina declares that since the alliance with the Silvages is so important, let him conclude it himself. She says that Duke Silvage can adopt his eldest daughter. Then they will have nothing to lose because she will become the Empress. When called out, Her Majesty shouts louder that they are doing with her marriage as they please, and talking about his makes her angry. Sighing, frustrated and tired, the Emperor tries to calm his daughter down and asks her to stop. But there's no way around it. It seems that Regina's courage and determination can only be envied. She looks at her father angrily and says that she will break the engagement. Her anger could burn this palace in a matter of minutes if it were on fire. Rising from the table, she repeats after him, "I ask," adding that the one who previously ignored her requests did not deserve to ask. And then, the girl goes to the exit when, without turning around, she calls Sir Aaron, and he rises from his seat. And then he calls his younger brother, Theor, who immediately looks at his sister in even more surprise. And Regina calls them, asks them to follow her right now. This seems like an important moment. Theor looks up at his older sister and sniffles intensely, realizing that he is making a decision. The next moment, a small hand confidently fits into another. It is squeezed by thin, girlish fingers. And just like that, these 3 bow out of the dining room, majestically and according to etiquette, at least in this. So they left the hall. They have already walked through one corridor. Now the emotions have subsided, and it seems worthwhile to explain to each other. Regina says that if this does not suit him, he can also complain. This is possible. The brother immediately asks to clarify what he should complain to her about, looks attentively, and the princess calmly and judiciously continues, saying that she means his engagement, which is about to happen. The boy only now realizes what his sister was getting at, and looks at her while continuing to squeeze her hand. Only now does he understand how important, necessary, and dear his sister is to him, it seems so. Now Theor squeezes her hand in response, not just firmly and tenaciously, but carefully, affectionately, realizing that he is under her protection, has been, and will be. And then he answers that in general, he is satisfied with everything. Regina clarifies whether this is true, in response with a confirming moo. Smiling tenderly, the girl says that she is glad if this is really the case, they can move on. At this time, Aaron, who is walking behind them, looks at them holding hands. This whole situation, this conversation, and what is happening between brother and sister makes you think about something. The next morning, Regina, as if nothing had happened, feels so carefree. Although she was in charge of the affairs of the palace when she was Empress Regent, she also took fencing lessons with her younger brother. Now you could calmly soak up the sun and drink a cup of fragrant tea. The only concern, of course, is that rumors about her are generally spreading rather poorly. Moreover, it would be nice if Herman stopped visiting her 3 times a week. I'm tired of driving away the Emperor's servants, but when will they finally give up? Well, it seems that the time has come to make your move. There is clearly no other way. Regina tells Selma that she needs to write a letter. She has been preparing the bait for a long time, and it is time for the trap. When Her Majesty asks if anyone wants to write something related to the maid, she replies that she knows that it's to Sir Aaron. This amuses the main character. She tries to understand if Selma is angry and asks about it. For some reason, the princess is amused by how angry the maid is, but she still does the job. She's such a cutie. Having asked if the girl is upset about the termination of the engagement, Regina hears that she does not want to be drawn into the mistress's affairs. It seems that her servant is definitely angry. She wonders how this is possible. He doesn't understand how he can stick to Sir Aaron so much, he almost breaks down into tears, which causes Johan to laugh nervously. Selma glares at the knight. He blushes, and the princess explains that she needs all this love for the sake of the legend, and moreover, she asked for Vestine. But the maid seems unable to accept this. What if they switched roles, Regina and Aaron? The princess wonders what would happen if Sir confessed his love to her, and with such a face. Such thoughts seem maddening. She complains that she will not imagine, because she still wants to live. And he adds to himself that for now, he can only look calmly at the lower part of his face. What a daring thought to imagine that Aaron is in love with him, given that she cannot even look at him calmly. And then Selma declares that even thinking about this could give her a heart attack. Then she adds that her main goal is to make Theor the next emperor, and no matter by what means. The princess tries to add the idea that even if there is no wedding, he will be her love for everyone. But the girl gets into an argument and mentions morality. But at the mention of lowering the bar, Regina grins. Her brother is trash, and she beats him with a baton. There are no daredevils to say that to her. It seems that the mention of the baton causes culture shock in Selma, and she personally burns it. The maid asks her mistress what problems Sir Aaron will have to face, and the princess complains that she has not done anything yet. But she argues, says that a mountain of problems has already been created, but Regina just brushes it off, declaring that she will only now start playing big. The time has come to prove to everyone that she is in love with Vestine. The main thing is to make everyone else believe it. And she assures that if Selma does not want to believe in her, then at least you need to believe about the beauty of the young man's face. The maid excitedly asks if the emperor will be angry that his daughter will see Aaron instead of Herman. They just brush this off because, according to the princess, there is nothing to worry about because they have Theor. Which makes Selma even more bewildered. What does the prince have to do with it? Only Regina says that she thought about everything a long time ago. And then there is a story that it seems that in the imperial palace, even a dog will not bark without permission. So where did the prince get all those dirty words? Then Her Majesty replies that the matter is clear. The boy escapes through the dog hole and walks wherever he pleases. The whole point is that the princess caught her brother in a past life climbing out of that hole when he tried to smuggle their property. Oh, then the elder sister almost died from the shock she experienced. The news was not pleasant. The servants are shocked and ask if the lady is going to use that hole for meetings with Sir Aaron. And in response, there are such careless arguments that dogs don't even use that hole. And if they do, they are so cute. In response to Johan's desperate request to bring some sense to the lady, he hears that the knight himself used this hole for his own purposes. At this moment, the princess hands over the letter and asks Una to deliver it and then return and begin the preparations she asked for. Then Regina asks Johan to tell her brother that she wants to meet him, while Selma, still in shock, appeals to reason. However, they don't listen to her, and the main character herself decides that she too should start preparing. In the meantime, we are transported to the castle of the Duchy of Vestine. Aaron received a letter and is sitting on the sofa reading it. He frowns a little, reading the lines of the letter over and over again. It's somehow strange. However, in the letter itself, in addition to the playful address, there is a postscript asking if he wants to play with fire. So what will he decide? Battling her eyelashes, Regina reports with trepidation that she could not sleep at the thought of meeting him. Aaron looks at the princess and experiences some conflicting feelings because of this. He doesn't quite understand the sincerity of her words and actions, whether she was really worried about meeting him, or the real reason for the girl's bad sleep is that it's all about the offer to play with fire. There is a pause between them. The blonde looks at the girl, not understanding where this is all going. Dissatisfied, Regina remarks that she should not stand like a pillar, but you can start behaving as if there is no choice. Having heard the consent to continue the game, the main character smiles contentedly, squinting as if from the sun. He goes on to say that today she especially took the time to choose her outfit and asks his opinion. While the girl freezes and shows off, the fair-haired young man also stands like a pillar and examines the princess's attire. Yes, of course, the princess remembers that Aaron is not at all interested in a relationship and was not clearly on dates. But while he is in thought for some reason, Her Highness feels too awkward. However, the blonde breaks the silence and asks permission to take the umbrella from her hands, and does it carefully. And then he opens the umbrella, lifting it so deftly, it looks so beautiful, although it doesn't seem like a flashy gesture. It seems that the young man's thoughts led him not so much to compliments. but rather to take action taking into account the scorching sun. In continuation of this, Eren raises an umbrella over them to shield them from the bright sun. Regina looks at him carefully, as if trying to feel and understand this moment. And then he breaks into a smile, no less bright than the rays that would not give rest if not for the actions of the blonde. After thanking him, the girl asks if he had lunch yet and states that she has reserved a table for them at the restaurant. Regina asks Eren to bear with her a little longer, warning that today the rumors will spread even more. The blonde young man looks at her and asks her about the rumors. It seems that he doesn't quite get the point. But the princess says that of course rumors will spread, because the princess will be immediately recognized, at least by her violet eyes. So it turns out that as soon as they walk along the main square, people immediately begin to whisper around them, recognizing the princess. The main character explains that their mission is to spread rumors among the people that Her Majesty is having a good time with an attractive man immediately after breaking off the engagement. It is precisely such rumors that will not allow either the Emperor or Sylvage himself to turn a blind eye to the situation. Oh, how the girl longs to piss off her ex-fiancé. This thought simply warms better than a blanket. When the couple finds themselves in a restaurant, Regina hand-feeds the young man with a sweet smile. Afterwards, already walking on the street, she, looking incredibly in love, hangs herself on his arm, cuddling. But suddenly an unplanned moment happens while walking. She stumbles. But the next moment, we see Eren checking her leg for a severe bruise or dislocation. The girl thanks. The blonde says that there is nothing wrong with this, and now we are convinced that Johan and Una have been watching them all this time. Further, they are already riding together in a carriage. The sun is sinking further and further below the horizon. The princess's knight can breathe a sigh of relief, but the maid wants to have a good time. The surveillance is coming to an end. Now, our couple is left alone. They are riding in a carriage together in the direction previously chosen by Regina. Vestine asks if the princess is okay with being followed secretly by a knight and a maid. Then the girl sighs irritably and says that Una reminds her more and more of Selma. Then the question is addressed to the knight. About Johan, the answer is that if she allowed him to accompany him, then Selma would truly begin to hate him. In fact, Regina wants Johan and Selma to be together, albeit secretly from others. While thinking about what she has planned, the princess suddenly remembers that she is worried about Sir Eren's reputation. Suddenly, the blonde's quiet voice distracts him from his thoughts. He asks if there is something wrong with his face. The main character immediately brushes off such a question, but blurts out a stupid question: is his beauty too much? Looking into her eyes, the young man can't help it, and this beauty is almost blinding. Needless to say, Regina has to go through another panic from such beauty. However, the girl notices that if his attractiveness were not so strong, then such phrases could grow a lot of rumors around him. After a self-confident answer that he says only what he himself believes in, a palpable and uncomfortable silence hangs. Of course, Eren's answers are always self-confident and stubborn, but there is a grain of truth in them. He is not lying. Finally, they arrive at the Duran estate. It turned out to be further than expected, but definitely abandoned. This place served as a sanatorium and was built several generations ago for the treatment of his sick daughter, located on the outskirts and in the distance. Emerging from her memories, Regina tries to let go of the images of the past looming in her head, and so the carriage stops. It seems that they have finally arrived at the right point. Eren and Regina stand next to each other and look at the estate. The girl looks around the estate and admits out loud that it is more beautiful than she thought. Suddenly, the young man's gaze finds unusual objects. He immediately asks what these boxes are. Then, Her Highness reports that they are for them. In these boxes, everything is for fireworks. It seems that it took a lot of effort and convincing for Una to deliver everything she needed on time. By the way, it was this maid who was wondering about the not-so-romantic planned event. Suddenly, Eren asks if this was what playing with fire meant. But the princess rejects such an assumption, saying that fireworks are not exactly what was meant. Vestine's interest forces him to insist on an answer. He again asks what was meant by this then. Smiling mysteriously, the girl asks him her question, asking if he would like to find out what was in mind. And then the answer comes, which Eren certainly could not have imagined. Regina plans to burn down this estate today. It seems that the blonde is perplexed as to how such a thing can be decided to be arranged, but upon questioning he receives the same answer again. He will burn the estate to the ground. And there is so much enthusiasm and fun in the girl's voice now. She is full of energy and pleasure from what is happening. And then, he stretches his hands forward and says that he plans to show a beautiful fireworks to the man he loves. There's a chuckle, Violet Eyes looking questioning if Eren is really ready to play with fire. She immediately clarifies that this action can officially be called a confession that she has become a scoundrel. From a past life, the girl remembered that when Theor was 14, he went alone to Kenyon Castle. And this obnoxious boy, who was already creating a lot of noise and fuss, did something. Probably the biggest dirty trick he has ever committed. Namely, he burned Kenyon Castle to the ground, yes, on purpose, without hiding the fact that he did it on purpose. Having learned about what happened, Regina felt despair, agony, and horror. But now it's her turn to play dirty tricks. Aaron looks at the girl, then at the estate, and again at her. Until a certain moment, he still hoped that this was a joke. But the guy finds the words, confirms that this is indeed an explicit statement. This makes the princess rejoice. She thinks that the plan is really gorgeous, and the place was chosen for a reason. It is not so far from the Imperial Palace. After all, rumors about the incident with Kenyon Castle spread for quite a long time, because the castle was far away. But in Regina's plans, so that rumors spread as quickly as possible, everyone should find out how she has deteriorated. And besides, there is another reason that helped decide on the place everything happened before the girl's rebirth. An incident occurred that affected both the guests of the estate and the residents of nearby villages they died. People were dying due to one unknown disease, according to rumors. One of the visitors to the estate became its carrier. As a result, it was possible to stop the spread of the disease only after burning the Duran estate and nearby villages. That is, if the disease still takes over the estate, it is better to get rid of it quickly. There is another reason, which is that if the flame ignites properly, then the area is surrounded by a lake. Now the girl is looking at the contents of the bags and the box, wondering if everything will be enough. While Vestine is asked not to worry and to help with the ignition, Aaron assesses the degree of thoughtfulness of the plan. It becomes very interesting comparing the facts, how long ago Her Highness began to plan this. However, he only responds by agreeing to help with the ignition, as asked, without complaining. True, there is uncertainty whether the idea will burn out, but the princess calmly states that residents of nearby villages will certainly notice that the estate is on fire. Then, suddenly, the girl asks the young man to turn away for a while. It sounds strange, but he fulfills the request. Honestly, I can't imagine what else this girl was up to. When Regina says that he can turn around, she shows him that the skirt could be separated from the dress. Now it is in trousers. Such a transformation seems amazing to Sir Aaron, what women's clothing is capable of. Full of energy and enthusiasm, the girl says that it seems it's time to get to work. Just by looking at the blonde one, can notice his certain thoughtfulness, more than usual. And then, when he takes one of the boxes, he returns to contemplating its beauty. With a smile, the princess is once again glad that she chose him for the story with feigned love. Dry good firewood has already been laid out. Now it is generously watered with flammable liquid. Regina reports that oil should be added in the basement as well. The blonde notes that the fire will gradually rise upward. 2 buckets will be enough. Then they go down together to the basement, lighting the road with torches. As they walk up the stairs, the young man pushes the girl aside and asks if she was here recently. Having received a negative answer, he points to noticeable marks on the floor of the corridor. This is surprising, because the estate is the property of the imperial family. Someone dared. The traces are quite fresh. And then, suddenly, the girl is struck by another guess that she has not had before for lack of evidence. No one has ever figured out the cause of the epidemic. 2 more years must pass before these events. However, the feeling of a strange premonition did not go away. Paranoia, it doesn't let go. It rolls in like a suffocating wave. It disturbs the heart so alarmingly. The girl again finds memories from another life, before her rebirth. This time, the events relate to her brother. For some reason, I remember the younger brother who was killed at the coronation ceremony. And then, a picture of an occultist, hated with all my soul, pops up in my head, smiling with a grin. Regina is still haunted by anxiety and paranoia. It suffocates her and tells her that this is not a clean matter. At this moment, Sir Aaron says that he wants to check who the tracks belong to and asks for consent to check first. Surprisingly, the girl does not argue. Then the blonde also asks to be alert and keep behind him. They all descend. Lower and lower, the young man puts his finger to his lips, asking for silence. And when they find the door to the basement, he knocks the door down with a sharp kick. Now we can see who could dare to break the law and get into the estate without the permission of the imperial family. Regina's violet eyes widen in shock, revealing her obvious surprise. They discover a living room. It has clearly been visited more than once, and not so long ago, because a fire was lit in the middle of the hall. But there is a more terrible discovery. The guy reaches out to a brown puddle near the fire and looks at the blood on his fingers. Taking a closer look, he reports that this is the blood of a monster, and the girl notices with irritation that she is glad that it is not human. As befits a noble sire taking care of the girl, Aaron says that if Regina is not used to it, then she should not look at this. But he suddenly hears movement behind him and turns around sharply to check what's wrong with her. To his shock, the princess does not back away in fear towards the door or stairs. Not at all. Instead, the girl is incredibly calm, already exploring this place calmly and without complaining, as if accustomed to this, which is surprising for a lady who grew up within the palace. At this moment, Her Highness calls him, says that there seems to be something here, perhaps evidence. She tries to draw his attention to the floor by the location of the blood. The girl determined the possible presence of a secret passage or hole. Approaching the indicated place, the future duke asks not to come closer. It is too dangerous. And then he takes the sword out of its sheath and, with obvious effort, tries to open the secret passage he has found. And this is not without effort, but it still turns out that there really is a secret hole in front of them. But even more surprising, there is a staircase underneath that leads even lower. Aaron asks Her Highness whether there was a circular staircase on the estate, and he is answered in the negative. Regina reports that such buildings are not typical of imperial buildings, and thinks to herself that it is illogical to build a secret dungeon if the basement was used to create the virus. But it seems that this is not the only find today, because they hear some noise. The princess exchanges glances with the blonde man in surprise, wondering if the one who lit the fire is still here. But also a frightening thought is the fact that not so long ago the blood of a monster was found. Strange sounds are coming from behind the wooden door, which is located at the very end of the stairs below. Lighting their way with a torch, our couple rushes forward, wanting to find out who is in the hidden dungeon. And what they see plunges them into obvious shock. It seems that they have found the monster whose blood was shed above. The hand carefully touches the fur, black as the night itself, gently runs over it. It seems that it is now clear who the blood belonged to, because it was pumped out in a cruel way. Regina suggests that the sound they heard was the last breath of the slain creature. But Aaron doesn't think so. He notices movement under the large body of the beast. Pulling back the skin, he reveals that 2 puppies are hiding under the dead creature. Now it becomes clear that the sounds that were heard were the crying of still tiny animals. When the princess takes one of them, the blonde is interested in her plans, and the girl says that she will take responsibility for them. No matter how sad it may be, when the girl takes the puppy in her arms, it is clear that they are still very tiny. With sadness, Her Highness allows her dead mother to be sniffed, and this sight makes her heart clench. The babies lick their mother's face, seemingly trying to attract attention to themselves, to wake them up. They spill oil in the room, which they also found on the dead animal. Regina swears that she will take care of the animals. And then Vestine and Her Highness leave the estate, moving to the main entrance from which the arson is planned to begin. The princess holds 2 tiny little animals with one hand, and with the other she holds a torch. At this moment, the princess realizes that, come to think of it, he never answered her. She again asks the question she tried to find out before, whether the sire likes to play with fire. Throwing a torch into the prepared firewood doused with oil, the girl hears that she has never done this before. Then the second question is asked, what about fireworks? Then the fair-haired young man says that he prefers them. To this, Regina cheerfully remarks that then he gets the sky, looking over her shoulder with a slight smile. At this moment, bright lights flash over the territory, claps sound, and fireworks begin. But the princess continues that if he got the sky, then she will get the estate. After watching the fireworks and fire burning over the estate, they are already watching on the other side of the bridge. Regina is interested in the young man's opinion about the spectacle. Then Her Highness turns to him again, trying to clarify his opinion, whether he thinks rumors will quickly spread. Instead of answering, Aaron asks the girl why she didn't set fire to the very same place she found in the basement. The girl grins. We notice something in her hand. She replies that she needs to find out who is behind all this, and as soon as he returns, he is going to order an investigation into this, already holding in front of him the vial found in the basement. Again, the question is whether she fears that the fire will not leave the basement, everything will burn to the ground, and Her Highness recalls circumstances from her past life. The epidemic ended with the burning of the estate, which means that if the same person was behind it, then everything should be in order. She does not notice that the blonde turns his gaze to her, watches with interest, examines her. At that moment, Regina stands holding the puppies, and she herself glows in the fireworks lighting. She shines so brightly. While Her Highness is thinking that perhaps the Kenyan estate probably looked even better, it seems that the young man notices someone. He reacts instantly by drawing his sword from its sheath and lunging forward, asking who is there. In an orderly tone, he barks that the uninvited guest should immediately appear to him. But in front of them are residents of the surrounding villages who say that they have come to put out the fire. Regina looks at them and asks them with concern to forgive her for the trouble she caused. But in response, the villagers fall on their faces in front of her, bowing, clearly recognizing who is in front of them. Apparently, the main one or the headman says that he can determine who is in front of them by the purple color of his eyes, and by the fact that there is only one princess. To this, Her Majesty generously reports that they can raise their heads. In addition, he immediately apologizes for this. While the kids are admiring the fireworks, the old man asks what they are apologizing for. At this moment, the girl with a smile on her face reports that the arson and resulting fire were her doing. And then she points to her companion and says that she wanted to arrange for Sir Aaron the best fireworks display in the Empire. Looking at the people, the princess thinks that despite the unforeseen circumstances, everything is going according to plan. However, suddenly the girl notices that her mother and father have lost the black spots on their faces. The woman touches her face in shock and then the man's face, making sure that her daughter's words are right. The villagers look at each other jubilantly, rejoice and hug. It seems they are happy about the deliverance. Then Regina says out loud that she was right, it really was about the estate. Hearing her words, the old man shockingly concludes that the emperor's daughter burned the estate to get rid of them. Now he has no doubt that Her Highness, like an angel, saved the emperor, instructs her brother, and now saved them too. According to the man's thoughts, the princess went so far for their sake, despite the fact that she would probably anger her father, and even came up with a false reason for what she did. It seems that this old man is determined to prevent false and vile rumors about her from spreading. But Regina believes otherwise, that the rumor that the obnoxious lady burned down the entire estate will reach every house in the empire. It seems that all this fuss and the topic of rumors causes stupor and indignation in Vestine. He says that it would be good if everything went according to plan, but, however, he cannot come to an agreement. They interrupt him in an attempt to calm him down. And in the background, the estate is dying so terribly and the sky is beautifully lit up with fireworks. They will go back making sure that the flames do not reach the forest. Next, we are transported to the Duchy of Silvage, where Anita demands Herman to repeat his words. And he repeats what he said, that the princess burned Duran's estate when she was playing with fireworks, even that place. Everything was burned to the ground. The occultist starts screaming and jumps up from her seat. What then is their plan? She is beside herself with anger. However, Herman only shrugs his shoulders and, with humility in his voice and eyes, replies that he is sorry. Anita screams like a siren that all they had to do was release the nightmare. Finally pulling herself together, the blonde asks if Herman can find another wolf, but he reports that there is not enough time for this. Clenching her hand into a fist, the occultist laments that none of this would have happened if she had known the middle name of the imperial family. Then the girl asks the next most pressing question, how to wash the Duke, and the answer is heard that he is close to the desired state. The questions don't stop. The blonde squinting asks how things are going with the Duchess, to which the clear answer is that it won't work for Lady Silvage. Then the girl adds that if his mother makes friends with Lady Vestine, it will provide them with Danelin flowers. And then, going to the window, Anita clarifies whether the princess still refuses to see Herman. He says that this issue has clearly been put to rest, to which he is offered an alternative to gain the favor of the emperor himself. According to the occultist, it is important for Barnard to maintain a balance between the Silvages and the Vestines. Herman looks at the fragile girl standing near the window and doesn't answer her anymore. We see his beautiful eyes. They are clearly clouded, and it seems that it is a matter of someone else's influence, because Silvage says that he will carry out the order. Looking out the window, Anita says that this princess needs to be dealt with as soon as possible. The girl opens the window and reaches forward when the young man says he will sort it out. Fragile, thin fingers too quickly and sharply. As if a snake were making a lunge, they grabbed a thin branch, breaking it off. When the blonde turns to Ser Herman, she holds a beautiful flower in her hand and smiles and says that she relies on it. A beautiful cup lands on a saucer with a loud clink. The boy screams, indignant that Duran's estate was burned to the ground. He asks what is all this for then, because he is sitting in front of his sister in a pink robe. They are having a tea party. But it's not just like that. The tea party is a veiled and demonstrative distracting event so that the younger one takes the antidote. It seems that despite the various exquisitely prepared treats, Thior is indignant. Persuading him to take the antidote from Danilov's flowers, the sister offers an alternative to bring a tuk-tuk, as she calls her baton. In fact, the girl thinks that she is offended that she was punished, and in a past life Theor got away with everything for a similar incident. The sister decides to guess the reason for the discontent, blames the fact that the dog holes have been blocked, and turns out to be right. The girl giggles at this, immediately points out that he should choose his words when talking to her, and offers to dig up new ones. She gives ideas that old holes can be replaced with new ones and finds arguments for her brother's attempts to argue. In addition, Theor smiles radiantly and calmly and informs him that he will certainly take him with him next time. Regina lures him in, asks him if he's been to the night market, and gets a negative answer while she squeezes his cheek. Then it's time for motivation. He says that he will take him away if he successfully passes the history test today. To this, the prince suddenly kicks his sister out of his chambers, which puts her into a kind of stupor. But Theor clarifies that if he needs to pass the test with flying colors, then he needs to prepare and she needs to leave. The princess freezes for a couple of moments from such arguments. There is a pause. But then he laughs cheerfully, realizing that his brother is not at all capricious or angry. And of course she leaves Theor's chambers, heading home, walking along the corridors of the palace. Regina struggles to control herself. She has to bite her lip and clench her hands. She can't believe that the mouth of her trash brother uttered such words. Now the princess asks Selma about Ser Aaron's schedule. She reports that he is conducting training with soldiers in the duchy. It's respectful to train other soldiers at that age, but it's all deserved. It's his early death that really worries him. Thinking about this, the girl again makes a promise to save his life this time. The maid asks if the mistress really needs to leave today, and Regina confirms that she promised Vestine. The eldest of the maids is indignant about this, because not even a day has passed since the punishment, but that is why the princess needs this outing. Fastening the sword belt on her hip which holds the baton, the princess warns that she will return by noon. Smiling extremely playfully and flirtatiously, she asks if Selma needs to bring any gift. To this, the maid only covers her face with her palm and asks to stay close to Knight Johann and Ser Aaron. Meanwhile, we are transported to the estate of the Duchy of Vestine, where a problem seems to have arisen. The eldest of the Duke's sons reflects on rumors that the princess is in love and the break of her engagement. But the next moment, someone violates his privacy by knocking on the door. The youngest of the brothers enters the room and immediately wonders why he was called. The question arises whether he really plans to meet with Her Highness today. Aaron confirms, correcting only that the prince will still be there. This throws the older brother into a stupor, but the younger one explains that the princess promised to show her brother the market. The lamenting grown man says that he did not think that the day would come when he would sigh at the sight of his brother's face. But, to Aaron's grin, the elder explains that this is not about the girl's sighs in love. The moment comes, and Giles asks if it's true that the younger one is in a relationship with the princess. He only replies that he doesn't understand. When asked angrily why he hangs around Her Highness then, he says, "It just happens that way." But this is puzzling. Someone who is not interested in a relationship is playing tricks with the Emperor's daughter herself. It just seems that Giles is getting it, even if not right away. But at least this way. The question is asked whether Aaron is helping to break off the engagement with Herman, and he looks away and tries to deny. The following are assumptions. Maybe the younger one decided to ward off his fans in this way. At this assumption, Aaron completely hides his gaze, which looks very suspicious. Finally, the youngest of the Duke's sons replies that it was an order, and that after the scandal with the princess, there would hardly have been another woman willing to get closer. They scold him, say that he is doing the wrong thing, to which the young man asks for forgiveness and looks ashamed. Questions follow whether there are any feelings between them in this case, and confirmation of this is heard. This calms Giles to some extent, however. He asks him to behave in such a way as not to harm Her Highness. Seeing that the latter is not entirely clear, the man decides to convey his thoughts a little differently. He speaks so carefully and insinuatingly it seems that Aaron is not even breathing while listening to someone else's speech. The question is asked about what he would do if, hypothetically, the princess developed feelings for him. The same Vestine estate. Everything seems quiet and peaceful. Everyone is busy with their own affairs. But Aaron, who has gone down to the first floor, is surprised by who he sees in front of him. Before him is his father, Bellety Vestine, Duke, who unexpectedly returned home. They exchange short remarks like robots, from which it is clear that the mother was worried about returning because of rumors. So the eldest of the sons comes down and sees his father and learns that dinner will soon be served. It becomes clear that Bellety communicates with everyone in short remarks, calling his son by name and saying the name of the one he is asking about. Giles says that Uncle Egil left on business to guard the Emperor at dawn. Next, a question to Aaron and the boarder. They answer that after coming of age they will go with their uncle. The servant watching this wonders how they can understand each other with such communication, and Aaron reflects on the fact that he will be able to go to the border after completing the contract with the princess. And then a meeting with Her Majesty, who waves her palm at him in a friendly manner, attracting his attention. The girl calls him to her, as always, dragging him into some completely wild adventure, smiling radiantly. He notes to himself the color of the princess's dress, and she compliments out loud without hesitation. Without ceasing to smile, Her Majesty informs him that he is planning a short walk and asks if he would mind having a snack. Suddenly, Regina pins a small bouquet of flowers on his vest, and Giles's recent question about relationships is remembered. The bouquet seems to emphasize their closeness, while the young man himself notes that this girl is different from everyone with whom he has ever become close. Noticing someone else's especially attentive and tenacious gaze on herself, Her Majesty freezes. Noticing that Aaron is sweating, the princess reaches out and wipes the sweat with a handkerchief, and the young man himself thinks about his attitude towards her touches. While the girl notes that it is true for him not to just wear such suits in the summer, Vestine thinks about his own. Looking at Regina with a slightly misty eye, he believes that Regina treats him like a member of the family, or even more. While someone else's handkerchief wipes his cheek, Aaron sinks deeper into his thoughts. The young man is trying to find out the root causes of this attitude. She probably treats him as a work of art. He admires, contemplates, observes from the side with such delight without hiding. For example, Regina does not allow you to walk on the side where the carriages drive. She protects you. And also he refuses the sun umbrella and offers to keep it for himself with a smile. I remember phrases in which she compared him to a work of art. At the same time, the girl wondered if he was drinking the tea that she gave him. Aaron confirms that he liked the tea, as did his father and brother. Then Regina clarifies when the Duke returned. Duke Vestine, a great warrior who serves only the Emperor, he is called the Unbreakable Wall of Elias. In a past life, Regina remembers that after the loss of his sons, brother, and wife, he weakened and soon died. It was hard to believe, like a bad dream, to know that she was disposed towards the Emperor and fled without Vestine. Dark times came, where power passed into the hands of the Silvages, the entire unstable empire. Of course, Her Majesty now wants to rely on Theor, who is changing, and perhaps will change the fate of the empire. Aaron's call distracts her from such thoughts when asked what she was thinking about. She shrugs it off, saying she remembered the sad events. Regina believes that since Egil did not go to the border, Aaron will not follow him. She wants to save the young man. She realizes that the Silvages will not just give up on the Vestanes, but it is important for her to protect their military power. Only in this way can the princess adequately resist the attacks of the Silvages. Suddenly, the girl asks if the young man's sword is okay, and says that she would like to give him a new one. And then he chirps again that, following the legend of an unrequited girl in love, she should have been given a sword secretly. Immediately, giggling foolishly, she asks Sir Aaron to forget about what she just said. But the blonde again looks at the girl especially seriously, feeling anxious. I remember my brother's question about what he would do if Her Highness developed feelings for him. What he would do. Looking away, Aaron clutches the umbrella tighter and decides that this will not happen. He believes that he will never have feelings, but what about the princess herself? Looking at her, the fair-haired young man wonders why she would go so far for the sake of an unloved man. In addition, sometimes Regina behaves so strangely, especially at moments when he does not expect it. As if hearing his thoughts, the girl suddenly asks if the young man will allow him to buy him a new suit. Such a proposal is not only confusing, it plunges you into shock and makes you shudder in fear like a boy. But here they are sitting on a cozy sofa waiting for tea, ahead of someone they are waiting to change clothes and the agony of choice. The princess, without any embarrassment, asks to carry all the most special and best things for the man she loves. Aaron tries to resist. Regina asks to accept the gift, and at this time the seller is shocked by the beauty of the Duke's youngest son. And now the first outfit, where the young man is wearing a suit with incredibly beautiful embroidery, which is repeated on the belt. And then he's in red, which suits the blonde black fur, gold accents, gloves, and glasses. The next image is no less beautiful because Sir Aaron has a corset around his waist, and his shirt is almost transparent. The seller and the princess, in complete delight, exclaim with a breath that this is the best moment of their lives. While the seller is trying to get the fair-haired young man to wear a dress, Her Majesty decides that since she needs to continue to demonstratively show her love for him, she is ready to spend a fortune on this. But after what seemed like an eternity to Aaron, they left the clothing boutique. Regina informs Theor and Johann, who are glaring at them, that she will take a walk with Vestine, and for now they should wait for them in the carriage. When the knight is given everything that the princess bought, he says that it seems too expensive for a gift. But there is a counter-argument to this from Her Highness, who says that the tyrants who turn their country into ruins do not spare money on their lovers. Only we learn that Regina acquired such knowledge after reading some novels in the Empire's library. Remembering this, the girl leaves thinking about the little puppies she took. Looking at Her Highness, Erin also remembers the tiny animals that Regina sheltered. She shares the story that she was told that the breed is called wolfhounds, and when she returned home with them, Thier burst into her chambers because of the buried dog holes, and Sir Lady, who entered with him, noticed the puppies. It was he who told her that witches once led this breed to extinction. This came as a shock, knowledge, for Regina, and the existence of this breed, for the knight. It was he who said that the main ingredient in witches' potions is the fresh blood of an adult wolf dog. When asked how he knew this, the guy replied that his father had once explored this area. Only here Thior stood up, mocking the fact that Count Tarahan not only explored, but went crazy about them. Further, Her Highness reports that it turned out that the puppies turned out to be brother and sister. She named the girl Riga, and the boy Rian. Erin praises this choice of nicknames. At the same time, Regina noticed a funny fact that Ryan does not like to be affectionate. He absolutely does not want to. But Riga constantly crawls towards her, begging with all her might for attention. Suddenly, in a different, less carefree tone, the girl suddenly attracts his attention. She asks Vestine if he also noticed something tense now. He confirms this. The couple turns around sharply and sees their pursuers. Her Highness notes that this is true to her soul. In front of them stands a small group of clearly unwelcoming men, whose faces are hidden by masks. Regina quickly takes out her baton while Erin takes the sword out of its sheath. The girl chuckles at someone else's impudence in the attack in the capital. They don't answer her, but looking into the tense gazes of the armed men opposite her, the girl thinks that Herman sent them. Judging by the way the largest of them frowns in response, one can conclude that they are angry. But the main character does not even think of being timid. She is amused by the fact that she can try out her baton. Taking a stance, Regina asks Erin how he feels, because the student will take part in a real fight. I remember that earlier it was not possible to remove the spell from the killer. One must be left alive for this purpose. The princess no longer wants to feel despair when she is left completely alone, and all her loved ones have died. Now everything is different. With the power of knowledge, she protects important people with the forces of the imperial family. And those whom she tried to protect all this time are in excellent condition. The main thing is that it continues like this. That's what's important to her. Therefore now, the princess with such passion and courage rushes at one of the bandits. After all, according to her thoughts, it seems the time has come to open the way to a better future. Vestine almost hides his voice while screaming Princess Regina. It seems that he is losing his usual calmness now. However, Her Highness doesn't seem to hear the appeal to herself. She deftly knocks the weapon out of the attacker's hands. And then, so gracefully, almost fluttering, he lands as hard as he can on his sharp heel. The bandit can be heard screaming in pain that he is experiencing at this moment. He clearly loses concentration. It was at this moment that he gets hit in the face with a baton. The girl swings from bottom to top. That's all. This one is clearly knocked out and has no plans to get up and continue the fight with her. But this is not enough. Regina picks up the bat and points it towards another bandit. The one who seemed the angriest and the healthiest is the one Her Highness chooses next. Looking into his gaze, she notices that he does not seem to be under the spell of influence. Without wasting even a minute, the princess makes a lightning attack towards him with a roar. The man blocks the blow and mockingly remarks that Her Highness knows more than he thought. In response to this, Regina is in no hurry to enter into a verbal spat. No, she declares that she will finish him off right there. But the bandit only teases her by saying such cruel words with such a beautiful face. Throwing the girl aside, he continues his mockery that she doesn't want to get more information from him. Breathing heavily and gathering her strength, Her Highness lets out a displeased snort. And then he shouts out how he dared to speak so arrogantly to the princess. This puts the bandit into a stupor. He barely manages to dodge the next attack in his direction. But Regina does not stop the attack, does not allow him to come to his senses, and attacks again, looking belligerent. And the next moment he hits him with force with a baton right in the solar plexus, causing him to gasp painfully. Standing next to the defeated big man, the girl herself mocks him, saying that she will interrogate him later. She is so angry now, shouting out why, what is the reason for what is happening? Regina is puzzled why they can't leave her loved ones and herself alone. At the very time when she was finally able to return these people to herself and is happy about it. It seems that these questions torment the girl constantly. Now it's time to throw them out into nowhere, essentially. The man replies that he does not know the answers to her questions. He only follows the master's orders. At this moment, Eren calls out to the princess, but does not have time to stop the execution. However, the next moment he grabs her a little harsher than he should. He asks if she is okay. But it seems that someone else's attempt to calm the blonde does not work. The young man complains that she should have run away and not entered into battle. Vestine seems incredibly excited about what happened and is now holding her hand tightly. But Regina doesn't answer, doesn't scream or argue, but only thinks that the maid will scold her for ruining her outfit. She calmly says that Sir Eren is too wound up, but he shouts her name again. The girl replies that she was just doing what she could, but the guy argues, because murder is not a trivial matter. It seems that the young man was too worried, but they notice to him that he does not know the princess at all. And then she adds that she is not going to say goodbye to life, and if this is the case, then she would like to go. Such an answer and an attempt to close the question puts the Duke's son at a dead end. He does not even immediately come up with an answer. Eren asks him to promise that she will never expose herself to the enemy again. But the girl, affectionately touching his cheek, says that she cannot promise such a thing. After all, because she belonged to the imperial family, she often hid behind other people's shields. It's time to change that, to show that she is with them. Without removing her hand, Her Majesty says that she is a sword, that she fights with others on the front line. The blonde is trying to appeal to reason. She doesn't have to do this, but the response is denial, and the knights of the imperial family are rushing here. However, the tete-a-tete conversation is not over yet. Regina asks again for a favor. Eren is interested in what? Without looking the sire in the eye, the princess says that he is a valuable person, both to her and to the Empire, and therefore his request becomes even stronger, causing the young man's heartbeat to accelerate. He doesn't know, but only by fulfilling this favor will no one be able to take away the peaceful sky above his head from the princess. Now we are already in the palace prison. The prisoner is chained and Regina asks not to kill him, because they need information. Chief Physician Darien wonders if this is somehow connected with the unknown liquid that was brought earlier. The girl answers evasively, giving recommendations to monitor his pupils and report on his condition. Darien tries to find out where the liquid got into the princess's hands, but she just shrugs. Having said that it would be interesting to know where this find came from, the girl immediately begins to giggle. The surprisingly serious gray-haired head physician also echoes her with a rather cheerful laugh. But suddenly the laughter stops, and it seems that the man was inspired by something from her smile. Yes, there can be no doubt this smile is so similar to the smile of Lady Sylvia, her mother. Immediately, he feels sick from the memories of how inappropriately and cruelly the father treated his daughter. The girl looks at him in bewilderment and makes an attempt to attract attention, calling him by name. But Darien brushes this off and says that it's nothing, and asks to go to Selma, which she's already been waiting for. An angry maid looks much worse to the princess than the bandits in that alley. She meekly and quietly inquires into the reasons for Selma's smile, already afraid of the answer itself. Then a skirmish begins, from which Johan and Una cling to each other in fright, like puppies, afraid of getting attacked. It's surprising that such an angry princess has never noticed a maid before. She must be just furious. But then something happens that Regina did not expect, and that makes her look at her interlocutor in shock. Selma is crying, and so bitterly that she is unable to say a word clearly, but it is clear that she was worried. Her Majesty sincerely apologizes and allows herself to be hugged by the maid, feeling partly guilty. At the same time, Eren cannot sleep in his chambers. Sleep does not come. Too much has happened. The young man argues that even though she can deftly handle a sword, how can a princess raised in a palace cope with murder so calmly? And then I remember those words that he is a valuable person for her and for the Empire. She asked him to become stronger. That's what she asked for a favor. It's so confusing. What do they mean? Over and over, Sir Eren replays this moment, this memory in his head. He is trying to understand the true meaning of the words that Regina said to him then. Suddenly, his restless time is disturbed by a knock on the door. The sudden guest turns out to be Giles. He enters his brother's chambers and asks about the ambush, wants to hear about the details. It seems that Eren's answer confirms his brother's guesses that this was an attempt on the princess's life. The elder is indignant. Giles seems to be cursing someone in particular, but also notices that his brother is somehow especially shocked. He calls his name. The youngest of the Duke's sons looks up, looking rather exhausted, and suddenly Giles asks to tell him everything that is on his heart, saying he is ready to listen. It seems that Eren has something to say or ask, but the sharp impulse suddenly fades away. But he still asks what it means if a person tells you to become stronger because you are important and valuable. At first, the older brother is in a stupor, but then he decides to try to unravel the subtext and asks, who said it? A man or a woman? Having learned that it is about a woman, Giles declares that this almost means a confession, but he speaks somehow too confusingly for Aaron. An attempt to ask again what they were talking about turns into a shock for the younger brother, because the older brother reports that this woman clearly loves him. With a grin, he continues to confuse even more, plunging into great panic. While Aaron is panicking, Giles laments who the brave woman is that dared to admit this after the rumors about the princess. We are immersed in the younger brother's memories, where many people tried to befriend him. And after communicating with them, his things disappeared, however. It seems that the princess is different from others, simply by being nearby. This is an unfamiliar display of intimacy, but if the contract was an excuse for intimacy, Aaron believes that he should stop it. For himself, the young man saw the benefit of protecting himself from other people's attention. But what happens could hurt Regina in the future. Giles distracts from his thoughts and asks if he blew off that woman, but the younger brother says that he didn't have time. Then the elder adds that we need to hurry up to do this so as not to give unnecessary hope. As the thought still hammers into his head that in such a situation hope is the most terrible thing, Aaron promises to sort it out. Regina gently strokes her puppies, saying that without them she was so sad and lonely. Una exclaims that she still had her. But the princess snorts offendedly and says that she doesn't want to hear anything from the traitor who abandoned her and ran away while Selma scolded her. The maid tries to apologize and attract attention to herself, but the dogs get it before the girl mentions the information. It seems that this is more interesting. The princess looks back at Una, clearly interested. Still offended, Regina says that she will decide if the information is useful after hearing it. And this seems funny. The Duke's son's birthday is coming up soon. Interesting. But the fact is that there is a club of admirers of Sir Aaron who celebrate his birthday, and that's where the information comes from. Regina nods understandingly. The whole point is that it's clear how Una got there because she is the eldest daughter of Count Emar. Turning to the dog, the girl scratches her chin and thinks about what they usually give to their lovers. Remembering that she had recently given various outfits for Aaron, she had to think carefully. Her Highness is overcome by uncertainty about what can be done better than this. Una asks if perhaps this information was already known. Noticing the gloominess, she only voices her feelings about the gift. Already cold from the assumption, the maid asks how much she spent on gifts for the Duke's son. Regina, remembering novels from the library, compares herself to a tyrant, says that there is as much money as petals, so as not to fall in the eyes of her lover, but in gold coins. And of course, the overall answer is quite frightening. Everything possible was bought for Sir Aaron. While Una is horrified to imagine what will happen if Lady Sini finds out about this, the princess asks if the girl knew something. The scum doesn't care about the consequences. She says it so enthusiastically that the maid squeals with indignation. And then we see a completely broken emperor and a lady opposite him, sitting with a straight posture. Bernard asks if she has heard that rumors have begun to spread that the princess has a crush on the second son of the Vestons. But, when asked what her daughter was thinking about, Regina defiantly adds even more compromising details. The man calls the girl by name, and she says that she would like to take her leave if there is nothing more to say. However, the father does not intend to let the princess go so quickly. He asks whether she will be happy if she breaks off her engagement to Silvage. She is delighted with such words and confirms the emperor's assumption that her daughter will be very happy. Then Bernard replies that he will allow her to do what she wants, to end the engagement, but will not allow her marriage to Vestine. Such a strange decision puzzles Regina, which she hastens to report, but in response she hears that this is impossible. Reports that the imperial family must maintain a balance, with those who side with the aristocrats and those who side with the high nobility. This could become a big problem for them. This surprises the girl. Where does such trust in the Silvage family come from? He closed all the dog holes and does not hear the steps of this family behind his back. After all, right now, the imperial family should be set up against them. They need to be prepared for an uprising. Rising, the girl declares that she will not harm the Empire only out of hatred for His Majesty. But Bernard announces his trust in her, and his daughter insists on announcing the end of her engagement to Silvage as soon as possible. And then, as etiquette requires, he respectfully bows and says goodbye to the Emperor. Regina is surprised, the words about trust after what happened before, what he expected because of such words. How many times before had the princess herself bowed before him and cried out for his cordiality? On the other hand, this happened more likely at a younger and more tender age. Feeling clearly confused, the girl decides to think better about a gift for Aaron. Regina has already received a second round of moralizing from Selma for spending big money. Now you need to think carefully about what you can give to the Duke's son. Her savings have already been taken away by Selma. One could turn to the Emperor's treasury, but perhaps this would be a sign of disrespect towards Sir Aaron himself. Frightened, Una asks if the mistress will ask her for assistance, which could become a problem. Regina asks the maid to come up with a gift for which she won't have to go into the treasury. Knight Theora hears this. He puts leashes on the puppies and, looking cheerful, says that he has an idea for a gift. They switched places, Una takes care of the dogs, and the knight clarifies about the princess's feelings. Looking extremely self-confident, the guy declares that an excellent gift to express feelings would be one made with his own hands, telling quite emotionally that such a gift is quite romantic and more eloquent than others. The princess makes a joke, but says that Jessie's idea is not bad, she liked it. At this moment, the main character jubilantly says that it means that a gift for Sir Aaron will be something that he makes with his own hands. We can almost look into the princess's window. Large crows are sitting outside it. It seems that the process is in full swing. One job has already been completed. The second remains to be completed. After some thought, Regina decided to make a brush for a sword and a scarf. She's currently engaged in embroidery. I wanted to do something more grandiose, but Una asked me to stay small. First of all, the girl quickly dealt with the dream brush, filling it with prayers and amulets. It's true that there are problems with embroidery, namely pricked fingers. Yes, this is a problem. On the other hand, it was even more difficult to figure out how to combine the coat of arms of the Emperor's house, the lion, the Vestine swords, and the Danelin flowers in a drawing. Una distracts her from the process, calls her along to take a break from this, to take a break. The embroidery remains in place and awaits her return when she continues. Seeing what comes out, the maid cannot contain her delight, complaining that it is impossible to use the same thing at all. And Regina replies that he is needed so that no one dares to approach someone who is busy. And then, the girl asks how the cake is made. The answer says that everything will be at a high level. A puppy distracts attention. This is Riga. She climbs and asks for affection for herself. Carefully putting away the embroidery, the girl looks at the pet and worries that the animals, accustomed to the house, will not learn to distinguish bad things. At this moment, Ryan looks at something and growls. The princess calls out to him and calls him. He doesn't leave his place, but at the same time you can see how he wags his tail, which means that he likes her. It becomes incredibly interesting how completely different the two characters of these dogs are. At this moment, the maid notices that there have been too many crows lately. To Regina's joy, these birds do not linger at her window because Ryan and Riga are chasing them. Someone's voice is heard. It's a young prince. He demands to drive away the crows. He clearly doesn't like them. Her Majesty learns that something similar has already happened recently, so she decides not to interfere. At this moment, another maid, Selma, comes and enters somehow completely silently. The girl looks at her expectantly, and then, unable to bear it, asks if it's quiet today and hears confirmation. We are talking about an invitation to a holiday. This is strange because there are 2 weeks left before it, but there is still no invitation. The princess decides to ask the girls if Sir Aaron is doing this on purpose. The girls seem confused, wondering what their mistress means. Regina reports that it is true that the Duke's son does not send the invitation for a specific purpose, perhaps playing along with a feigned obsession. And also, Her Highness, that in this case she can appear uninvited and cause a stir. This terrifies Selma. She asks again in shock and, having received answers, also sighs in shock about the intention of confessing. This is simply incredibly wrong behavior for the Emperor's daughter, which is why she reacted like this. While the girls are discussing this situation, meanwhile the puppies have already both taken a place in front of the window in opposition to the crows. Only no one else notices that one of the crows has purple eyes. She listens to the conversation outside the window. Una hands Selma into the capable hands of Johann. Regina asks her to take a walk. She needs air. The knight immediately, contentedly, and jubilantly announces that he will do so. It's clear how happy he is with the opportunity. And the princess herself also returns to work. She sits down to embroider and continues the work. The girl is really determined. She hopes to make it on time. But what do we see? Some letter or message in someone else's hand seems to be able to solve a lot. Noticing his nephew, Eagle wonders if he still hasn't sent an invitation. Uncle notes that whether he sends him or not, now in any case it will be awkward. It seems fun for the man to see that his nephew is clearly worried about the lady. Eagle is saved from ridicule by the appearance of Giles, who says that his father is waiting for his brother. Judging by the words of the eldest of the Duke's sons, their father is clearly out of sorts for some reason. Hearing this, the uncle hurries to hide from sight, and Giles wonders whether Aaron is interested in the one who recently confessed to him. These thoughts arose from the realization that his brother was so nervous about sending the invitation. However, looking at the invitation, the young man is tormented by reasoning whether to send it or not to interfere with the plan. It just seems that Giles perceives this a little differently, not like the younger one himself. Words about going crazy certainly don't make the situation any better. Yes, the eldest will be worried. At this time, in the princess's chambers, her hair is carefully combed and she looks joyful. The whole point is that even if it was on the last day, Regina was still invited to the holiday. In her hands is the very expected invitation. The girl gives orders to begin preparing the outfit. Her Majesty, by the way, did not expect to receive this invitation. She decided that Aaron was leading everything according to her plan. But quite suddenly, the day before her birthday, the invitation finally came to her. The girl looks at him once again and tries to understand what such a gesture should mean. The gaze in the reflection is automatically directed to the gift that lies on the bed. The main character is thinking about when would be the best time to confess to the young man. By the way, the place must be appropriate. A greenhouse will not do. It's too far away. It needs an audience. Actually thinking about the greenhouse, Regina can't help but remember the moment when their faces were so close. The more Her Highness plunges into memory, the more visible the changes on her face are. She turns redder and redder in her face, which does not escape the maid's gaze. Of course, Selma decides that it's a fever and is going to call a doctor, but they explain to her what's the matter. Having assured that everything is fine with her, to her shame, the princess realizes that the truth cannot be told at all. The girl decides to distract the servants. She encourages everyone to focus on preparing her image. The way she reacted when remembering the incident in the greenhouse was very confusing. We see a girl riding in a beautiful gilded carriage. She feels excited. After all, usually Selma always accompanies her, but not this time, yes. Surprisingly, the maid refused to accompany her, not wanting to see the first confession. But her faithful personal knight, who seems filled with cordiality, Johann, is traveling with her. Her Highness turns to the red-haired young man, asks what he talked about with Selma. He replies that it is a secret. When he attempts to threaten that he will not help, he immediately hears the knight's answer that he has been ordered to challenge him if Ser Aaron refuses the girl. It makes you laugh. The maid's experience is just incredibly funny. When asked if Selma really doesn't believe in Ser Aaron that much, Johann replies that it's about caring for the princess. Regina tries to find out how things are going between them. The knight reports that everything is still muted. Her Highness watches her warrior with undisguised delight. Be that as it may, Johann is one of the most noble knights who defended the princess until his last breath. She suggests that if he had not died, perhaps she would not have had to end her life then. And besides, they were able to meet again only thanks to that necklace, nothing else. Speaking of the necklace, the princess studied many books in the library, but only found a line mentioning it. However, the initial plan is to resolve the issue of breaking the engagement first. And after the issue is resolved, she will find more information about the necklace. But what distracts me from thinking about this is that the girl arrives at the appointed place. Coming out of the carriage, accepting the offered hand, Her Highness notes the idle bustle. As expected, guests are greeted by a servant who asks about the success of the trip and should be escorted into the house. When the princess appears inside, of course her appearance is announced according to the rules. The footman loudly announces that the Princess of the Empire, Regina d'Alper, has arrived for the holiday. She is now accompanied by her knight Johann. They watch as the noble people bow in respectful bows. And now before them are the owners of the house and the holiday. All three Weisstein men, a father and two sons. Regina asks about the health of the Duke's wife. He talks normally and reports that it is better. The medicine given by the princess helped. And then the girl turns her gaze to the brothers. There is a short pause and silence. The knight hands over the box with the gift. The princess hands it to Aaron along with verbal congratulations. The box passes from thin women's hands to men's hands. The Duke's youngest son reports that there was no need to worry. Only later, Regina unexpectedly adds that this is not enough to describe all her feelings. It seems that the young man is embarrassed, but Regina, noticing that everyone is looking at them, offers to open it. Aaron doesn't argue in a confused state. He pulls the red ribbon. And what he sees when opening the box plunges him into some kind of shock. It seems the blonde is confused. Inside the box, a sword brush and an embroidered scarf are incredibly aesthetically beautiful. Coquettishly covering her face with a fan, the princess adds that she made them herself. Hearing this, the guests are shocked. The emperor's daughter herself made the gift with her own hands, and there are two more of them. Immediately, there are whispers among the guests. They discuss the gift, the princess's love, and the unbroken engagement with Hermann. Everything is going as Her Highness intended. Gossip and discussions are multiplying because of such an act. However, seeing how girls standing not so far away whine about a missed opportunity, the agreement works to his advantage. Covering herself with a fan and grinning, Regina believes that from now on no one will dare to lay an eye on him. Turning to Aaron, the princess once again congratulates the young man on his birthday, and he thanks him. And then, still in silent shock, he watches as Her Highness leaves him. Aaron remains standing, holding the things given to him in his hands, seeming to become more confused. And all because such a gift seems like something special, he examines it with a sigh. Looking around at the guests, Regina notices that there really are a lot of noble ladies gathered here. But the mood spoils when they call out to her and Herman appears in front of her. While he kisses her hand, the princess remarks that she did not think that he would come here. The Duke's son replies that he came to congratulate him. A slight smile touches his lips, and it seems that he is going to add something that the girl will not particularly like. And so it happens. Pulling a little closer to him, Silvage suddenly asks for something. He asks for an audience to give him just a little time. Regina is surprised. I didn't expect such a turn, and by the way, Aaron is still busy. He is still greeting guests. He just notes that if she refuses, Herman will not just leave her behind. That's why he agrees if it takes a little time, without seeing how Silvage looks at someone. And he looks right at Aaron, who, as it turned out, did not take his eyes off them. Herman allows himself a victorious grin in this unspoken and silent confrontation. Vestin can only watch this, but it seems that his gaze lights up with fire. Now there are opportunities to appreciate the Vestine family garden. It is truly beautiful. Herman notes this out loud, and the princess insists that he get to the point quickly. For some reason, Silvage is amused by someone else's high heels and the rush to get back to the gym. Quite suddenly, a young man notices that crows do not fly at night. Next, Herman asks about the recent assassination attempt and says that he should have been warned. Officially, he is still her fiancé. This wildly infuriates Regina because she believes that it was he himself who incited those killers. With her hands folded across her chest, the princess wonders if this is the only reason she was called here. When asked about his partner, Herman says that Anita is resting on the estate and that's not the main thing. Suddenly, the young man changes his face and asks a question point blank. Why Her Majesty has changed so much? Something is noticeably changing in their conversation. The girl feels an obvious danger in this. In an attempt to keep face, Regina says that she does not understand what this question is about and covers herself with a fan. But Herman looks at her directly and repeats the question, saying that he needs to know why such changes are happening to her. Then Her Highness decides to outplay and destroy Herman, unsure whether they will believe her. She is not sure that he will believe her. But while the message about the broken engagement and information about the rights to the sapphire mine is sent to the duchy, Silvage decides to try. The young man asks if she is really talking about love. The girl makes a bashful excuse. And then she folds her hands and begins her usual chatter about how much she is in love. She demonstrates her love with all her might, talks about trepidation, and tries to speak the same as Anita. Standing half-turned, the girl plays her already well-learned role and talks about strong love. And then he realizes that tears are needed. He tries to think about something sad when his speech hints at non-reciprocity. Out of sadness, a younger brother comes to mind, the one from the past who was soon killed. Then she manages to cry, thus complementing her image in the demonstration well. Turning around, Regina declares that despite this, she will still try and will not let her beloved down. While Her Highness adds that she hopes that Aaron will deprive him of his head, Herman himself clarifies whether she has decided everything. The princess confirms and says that nothing can be done. You can't order your heart. On purpose, the main character adds about indifference to condemnation, which Vadis also reported recently. Continuing to act out her incredible love, Her Majesty wants Silvage to experience similar feelings. And then he wonders whether German is satisfied with such an answer, rejoicing to himself at the spoiled plans of others. But the young man asks in surprise whether everything was real and serious. He says that he believed that all this was started just to break off their engagement. Angry at Herman's quick wit, the girl hastens to dissuade such an assumption. If you don't know who is in front of her, you might think that the blue-haired son of the Duke would be saddened in the end. But Regina is not going to waste time on this and is in a hurry to take her leave as soon as possible. However, Herman does not let her go. He says that before letting her go, he must say one important thing. And then he says that he heard that there are a lot of crows around the palace. They circle around and gather in flocks, flying at different times of the day. Regina reluctantly confirms as she sees one of the birds land on Silvage's hand. Taking a closer look at the raven, Her Highness notes that the color of the bird's eyes is similar to Anita's eyes. And here the phrase of the Duke's son is repeated, "Crows do not fly at night, Your Highness." He asks the girl to think about this and about what is now in the imperial palace. Having said this, Hermann passes by her and leaves her completely alone with her thoughts. Lost in thought, the princess tries to think about what is in the imperial palace, and when it suddenly dawns on her, Her Highness hastily leaves the garden and strives for the exit. She meets Aaron, apologizes to him, asks him to explain to the Duke, and says that she urgently needs to leave. The blonde doesn't even have time to say anything. He is completely shocked by such agility and possibly something else. And now he watches as the princess hastily leaves him. All he can do is look after him. It seems that the Duke's son had something to say to her, but the situation turned out differently. The carriage rushes at full speed towards the palace, while Regina thinks, according to Hermann, crows do not fly at night. Moreover, the obvious fear is fueled by the color of the crow's eyes, like those of the occultist herself. Suddenly, Johann, who is riding nearby on a horse, calls out and says that she must see something. The knight and princess look ahead and see that the sky above the palace is literally black from the crows that have flown here. Beside herself with horror, the girl says that they must speed up. They urgently need to go to the palace. These are clearly not ordinary crows. They move too synchronously. It's surprising why Hermann told her about this. It's strange. It sounds like he was trying to help her, however. It's strange, but they drive up to the palace. And there is an invasion of birds that break glass, fly in, and terrorize everyone. Attack. The servants ask for help and scream. There are people croaking and screaming everywhere. It seems like some kind of nightmare. The knight tries to stop the princess, saying that there is danger for her ahead. But Her Highness does not listen, but hurries to the palace full of determination, but also fear. Only now the girl understands why all this is happening. They want to get rid of the witness, the captured bandit. Suddenly, someone strong, but careful grip stops her and prevents her from breaking forward. Johann tries to stop the princess, because it's dangerous here, but Regina demands to step aside. This is an order. It was at this moment that the princess was informed that the prisoner who was in the dungeon was dead. This news makes her wilt. This is a successful step on the part of the enemies. She didn't have time. Johann commands the guards, talks about the importance of the safety of the princess, and gives orders. At this time, Regina is already in her chambers, with her maids Una and Selma next to her. If the younger Una asks the mistress what is happening, the older one tries to calm her down. But the princess is incredibly angry and upset. The raid of crows and the death of the hostage are to blame. Perhaps there would have been no death if she had earlier understood the meaning of the phrase that crows do not fly at night. And now what happened, and this time you can't rewind time. It's depressing. When she goes to the window and opens the curtains, a terrible sight opens up. They cover her eyes. They also ask you not to look, because there are dead birds and blood everywhere, a terrifying sight. When Selma takes care to close the window and prevent her from seeing it, Regina reveals that she needs to see Theor. In response to other people's admonitions, Her Majesty demands that the soldiers be told that she must make sure of her brother's safety. And no one dares to refuse her. She is too serious. She is escorted to the prince's chambers. She sees Theor sitting hidden in a blanket and tears running down his chubby cheeks. Regina comes closer, sits down next to him and asks how he is and where his knight Jessie is. Looking incredibly calm and confident, the girl defiantly puts the bear in front of herself. Reaching out with her hand, she gently touches Theor's hair, strokes and soothes him, saying that no one in the palace will harm him. He notices the child's bright fear, but continues that he has an older sister, to which Theor, seemingly frightened, jumps up and begins to shout at her, saying that she herself is frightening him and he is not frightened at all. In response, in a threatening tone, Regina pulls back this bravado and says that she can use a chair instead of a baton. In a trembling voice, the prince makes an attempt to argue with her, speaks of threats. There is a fuss and a squabble. Theor tries to escape, and the maids laugh at this scene. The princess is caught squeezing her brother's cheeks when they announce that the garden cleaning has been completed. Dressed in a more militant outfit, Her Highness finally heads out to obtain information. Knights Jess and Johann greet their mistress in a smooth and synchronized manner, as befits. The girl asks if they managed to find out anything valuable from the prisoner before his death, but they say no. Moreover, the eyes were misty. The whole situation angers the main character, even though the prisoner was not part of the plan. While Her Highness is fuming over the whole situation and her apparent loss, Sir Jess suddenly laments that it doesn't look like a witch's spell. This interests the girl. She turns to him, although she calls him out of habit as a lady. When asked, the young man replies that his father told him that crows flying at night are the minions of witches. Regina again returns to those words about crows flying at night. It becomes creepy, but it seems that there is not enough information. The girl asks what he said about Riga and Rian when they appeared. Jesse reports that he knows that witches are a long-extinct race that was associated with the occultists. The young man is very surprised whether current events can be connected with the missing witches. Her Majesty believes that one cannot turn a blind eye to this and asks to talk with the knight's father. To this, Jesse complains that this is not feasible because his father has gone somewhere again. At this moment, Regina remembers that Count Tarahan is known for his thirst for travel. The princess tries to find out when the count could probably return. Jesse just shrugs. The son himself is interested, but given that the previous journey was short, he probably will not return soon. A couple of days later, we see Regina sitting drinking tea in her chambers. Everything is quite peaceful. Of course, this invasion of crows was discussed, but fortunately the news of the broken engagement blocked everything out. She remembers that active preparations for her birthday are about to begin. She hopes that this time everything will go quietly. By the way, the exquisite and beautiful outfit is already ready. This dress will definitely make a splash. And then, getting up, the princess asks if Aaron received a gift from her. The maid enters into a debate about the brooch given to her son by the Duke, but, as always, Regina has an answer. Her Majesty talks about the norms of the scoundrel, and the woman tries to appeal to the mistress's logic when choosing a gift. The presented brooch has precious stones of a purple hue, the color inherited from the imperial family. According to Her Majesty's logic, such a gift is logical for a scoundrel who has gone crazy with love. Regina clarifies the preparations. Everything must go completely as she planned, with recognition. The news about the broken engagement is most opportunely combined with confession and crazy feelings. Already leaving the room, the girl reports that everything is fine as long as it benefits her. At this time, the unfortunate Aaron is tormented by heavy thoughts that until this time everything was just a pretense. It's only later that he doubts what Regina really feels for him. And all because the young man overheard part of the conversation between Herman and the princess. It seems that Her Highness's words about non-reciprocity and feelings were so sincere. The man fears that all this is real. It seemed too true. Remembering again and again, the blonde thinks about that same expression on the girl's face. This is what leads to the conclusion that the girl definitely has feelings for her, without a doubt. Looking at the gift sent, he thinks that he will not be able to accept them, because he has decided that he will accept a fate similar to his uncle. The Duke's son decided that he would go to the border and devote his life to service. I remember my brother's words that no matter how much he rejected her, it would still be difficult to live in the capital. Then the younger brother says that as soon as he figures it out, he will go to the border. Aaron decides to let the girl know that he cannot accept her feelings, no matter how difficult it is. Regina, preparing for the reception, learns that there is someone who longs for an audience with her. The Emperor's servant reports that His Majesty insists on his daughter's presence. Absolutely brazenly, the princess says that if he needs it, then let the Emperor come himself. She is busy. But it's all because of Bernard's order that he demanded that the holiday be made grandiose. The girl was completely immersed in the bustle, checking the list of guests during the meal and confirming her arrival while putting on makeup. It seems that the Emperor's servant is upset he doesn't know how to say this to his master. All this hustle and bustle is simply unsettling. It seems that the princess is terribly exhausted. By the way, she is the one responsible for preparing her father's holiday, which will take place in winter. It's just that Regina thinks that a real scoundrel shouldn't be very responsible for something like this. And now, the long-awaited evening is finally coming. Today as a holiday in honor of the princess's birthday. The guests have already arrived. The princess and the emperor are already on their way to meet them. Turning around, the father is going to compliment her beautiful outfit or ask something, but it doesn't work. The daughter turns to Theor. Indignant, the girl scolds her brother for his crooked tie and immediately corrects it. Suddenly, Bernard feels a strong and obvious estrangement from his children, and it hurts him. The servant, who is ready to report to the emperor, becomes an involuntary witness to this picture. Finally, the imperial family goes out onto the balcony to greet the guests, and a footman majestically announces their arrival. The guests pay their respects to the royals, each while the emperor and family look on. Meanwhile, you can notice the exquisite decoration of today's holiday, gilding and flowers everywhere. There are large chocolate fountains on the tables. The tables are laden with all kinds of delicious snacks. But the gilding and chocolate fountains seem to be removed from the list by the princess. She believes that this is the work of the emperor himself, who, sensing his gaze, turns to her. At the same time, the prince is already drooling, looking down and noticing only the chocolate fountain. But the sister attracts Theor's attention, warns that today is an important day for her, and if he indulges, then she will get very, very angry, as if making it clear what will happen next in this case. The prince waves it off, saying he understands everything. They just have to wait for the end of their father's speech. And the emperor makes his speech, where he thanks everyone for honoring this evening with the presence of his beloved daughter at the holiday. The crowd suddenly fell silent and looked at him, clearly shocked by such words. And then he adds that he hopes they will enjoy the day when his lovely daughter appeared. Noble people are whispering. They are trying to understand whether his words are sarcasm, since when did the princess become his favorite? Regina freezes in place, literally turns to stone from this, because she couldn't expect something like this. She did not expect that the emperor would talk such nonsense in front of the guests. This interferes with her plans because the most discussed topic should be the confession of the princess. Everything was going so well, and now the emperor decides to disrupt all the calculated moves with such a speech. The emperor notices his daughter's gaze and wonders what was wrong with his speech. He complains that he is disgusting and pathetic. I remember a conversation with the chief physician who said that the emperor would regret it. Then Darien told him to think about how to improve his relationship with his daughter. And judging by the angry look, he seems to have already lost his daughter. This explains the reaction. Regina turns to him. The father asks what is wrong, feeling frightened that his daughter is so angry. Then the girl with a smile offers to stop talking nonsense and return to her place as soon as possible. Quickly turning attention to herself, Her Highness offers to enjoy the banquet and makes a sign to the musicians. Immediately, a beautiful piano playing begins. The silence that hung recently disappears. With musical accompaniment, the evening again looks more like a holiday. The nobles communicate with each other. But the prince and the emperor remain standing on the balcony. Theor watches the strange expression on his father's face. And finally, the princess descends from the balcony into the hall, where she meets Aaron in front of everyone. The duke's son shakes hands with his companion and can appreciate how especially beautiful Regina is in this dress. While the blonde gives an assessment to himself, the girl on the contrary voices out loud how beautiful he is. Finally, the couple goes to the center of the hall to dance. The audience parts, everyone watches what is happening. Her Highness notices that the young man is somehow particularly constrained and asks what is bothering him. She compares Sir Aaron's expression to that of an emperor grieving alone on a balcony. Then the girl continues, asking if he can give her some time after the dance. And the fair-haired young man says that he was going to ask her for the same thing. Regina admires him, thinks that he is beautiful even while clearly in deep thought. Believing that these are worries about their contract, Her Highness asks to endure what comes next to herself. Noticing her brother, the girl complains that he is without Lady Greta today and offers to dance with him. The older sister very frighteningly warns her brother not to think about drinking today. The prince, looking angry and gloomy, heads towards the chocolate fountain. Then the girl notices her father, peeking around the corner, clearly demanding attention and forgiveness. But the girl only indifferently turns away from him, which seems to break the man's heart. Suddenly, the girl's path is blocked by Anita, who congratulates the princess on her 16th birthday. And then she holds out a certain box, hoping that they will accept a modest gift from her. Regina blames etiquette. Gifts must be given through servants, but Vedas reports that this gift is special. As luck would have it, the crowd nearby became interested in the situation and looked directly at them. This is embarrassing, and will not allow them to send the blonde away so easily. She has to accept the gift, then asks if she can open it and receives the answer as she wishes. Not expecting to see anything of value, Her Highness opens the pink box. And it seems that she definitely did not expect to receive such a gift from the occultist. On a velvet pillow lies a pendant, the same pendant that granted her wish. At this time, Anita congratulates the princess on the holiday again, smiling seemingly meekly. And then she adds that she made this pendant with her own hands. Regina asks again, with her own hands, the witch confirms, believes that the princess has already received many precious gifts. How frightening is the fact that the occultist gave a necklace so similar to the relic of the first emperor. Closing the box, Her Highness thanks for the gift and thinks that this is not a coincidence. It's just that the princess looks reserved and sweet, asking about the exquisite pattern. The occultist declares that there is nothing special about him. He came to her mind during the creation process. The main character hands the box to the servant and asks him to take the gift to her chambers. And then Regina asks where Herman is, why he doesn't accompany Vedas at the holiday. Then the blonde says that he is a little unwell now, which makes the girl tremble. This look, the fact that Silvage did not come to the holiday today, somehow greatly worries the princess. Of course, Anita is pretending to be a fool, saying she doesn't know what exactly is there, but Her Highness cannot be fooled. And then Regina asks about the Duke himself, to which Vedas reports that his health has suddenly deteriorated and he is with the Duchess in a country house. Hearing this, there is reason to be wary, because before the princess was reborn, everything was different. before the Duke and his son rebelled and attacked the castle during Theor's coronation. The Duchess suffered from mental illness and committed suicide on the day of Herman's coming of age. Only now Duke's condition had worsened. This was extremely alarming. While Anita says goodbye to her, the princess is thinking about what is happening now in the Duchy of Silvage. This really worries the girl, but she tries to pull herself together and focus on other things within her control. Among the guests, Her Highness finally finds the one she planned to talk to after the dance. Sir Aaron, sensing her gaze, raises his own. It's a pity that the girl doesn't know how embarrassed he is by this. The Duke's son strides towards her. While the princess steps gracefully towards him, the audience is distracted from their conversations. Under the gaze of all the guests, Regina asks to take a moment while planning to make a false declaration of love. And now, finally, they are in the scenery that the girl dreamed of, and she thinks that the Duke's son understood exactly what would happen next. The time has come to carry out your plan, to do as you planned while everyone in the nobility is spying on them. Thank you for your time, Regina reports that it is time to begin. Literally behind them, people are watching outside the large window, wanting to listen. Her Highness gathers her strength, even if these are not real feelings. But this will clearly require strength. But suddenly Aaron asks to excuse him and let him start speaking first. Of course, this goes against the plan, but Regina believes that this is something like improvisation. If I knew why the Duke's son was gathering strength now, he wouldn't be so calm. The blonde feels guilty about what he is about to do and looks for reasons for this. After all, previously he often refused girls. What a difference now, perhaps, is that they spent so much time together. Although it may also be how great the princess's despair was, it is difficult to ignore. But maybe it's about something completely different. Yes, maybe so. The young man finally looks up. He sees Regina in front of him and thinks that the whole point is how wonderful the girl is. And now, having gathered his strength, he asks to forgive him, which causes confusion for Her Highness. Speaking pompously, the noble young man, to put it bluntly, takes away her hope and sends her away. The princess tries to stop him, asks if he thinks that her feelings are sincere. But nevertheless, Aaron continues, complaining that his selfish passion will bring Her Majesty only troubles. She says that she cannot accept her feelings, while the guests hear everything. The princess tries to convey to him that her feelings were insincere, but the blonde believes that she is trying to deceive him. Like a clock, Aaron repeats and repeats that he doesn't love her, and he doesn't listen to what the girl says that she doesn't love him either. And the whole reason is the idiotic older brother, who completely confused the younger one. In desperation to prove to the Duke's son the sincerity of his lack of feelings and in shock from the situation, the girl asks to sort it out. But the young man runs away. Yes, he literally runs away, opens the door and rushes away as fast as he can, leaving the princess alone on the balcony. Do I need to explain how shocked Regina is now left alone? I hope not. It's noticeable from the expression on her face. Theor, who arrived here, pokes his finger at her and asks, quite inappropriately, whether she has been turned off now. Experiencing an incredible degree of indignation, despair, disappointment, and shock, the girl cannot hold back her tears. A little later, we see Jess jerking open the door, looking for his brother and calling out to him. He is in sluggish attempts at fencing. Then the older brother yells that rumors that he abandoned the princess have spread throughout the continent. How could he publicly send the girl off? Aaron reveals that he didn't know they were being watched. He thought they were all alone. But the uncle is having fun. He laughs at the situation, and his nephews are clearly not worried. Instead of discussing what happened, the uncle and youngest nephew decide to train together. During the fight, the man asks why Aaron blew the girl off yesterday. In response, he hears that his nephew believed that it would be better this way, before he fell in love too much, claims that the attraction was only on her part. The governor mockingly asks if he really dislikes her so much that he did this. At this moment, the young man is just making a dangerous lunge, aiming at the older man's neck, but the man's sword deftly stops the attack. And Aaron shouts out the phrase that he treats the princess well, he just doesn't have feelings for her. Again the attack. The forces are almost equal, the grinding of metal swords colliding in a sharp rush. Suddenly, one of the swords was knocked out, and flying out of the owner's hands, makes several turns and flies to the side. The uncle says that be that as it may, the Vestines must apologize. The eldest heir complains that he should do this. Also, the eldest brother notices that Aaron needs to prepare to go abroad with his uncle. And then he adds displeasedly that he will have to sort out the rest. Egil sarcastically asks his nephew whether he will regret rejecting the princess of their empire. To Aaron's bewilderment, he explains that, be that as it may, Regina is a representative of the best qualities of the nobility, and it is not so easy to find such a girl. Therefore, he again asks whether the nephew will regret such an act in the future. It seems that it is not easy for the son of Duke Vestine to answer such a question. He thinks about it. But then he stubbornly replies that the day when he will regret it will never come. Meanwhile, throughout the empire, people are discussing the fact that Eren rejected and abandoned the princess. They say that he was probably tempted by the beauty of his face, and in general, beauty apparently is not the main thing for him. The maids in the palace are in tears, complaining that the princess has not left her chambers for the 4th day and has not eaten. As for Regina herself, she hid under the blanket in her bed in the dimness of the room. Shedding tears, the main character wonders how Eren didn't believe that she didn't love him, and such a misunderstanding arose. The girl cannot close her eyes even if she wants to. His handsome face constantly appears before her eyes. Regina's almost beside herself with the fact that she was rejected by someone for whom she essentially had no feelings. How is this possible? But after a flash of rage, apathy returns, and she crawls under the protection of the blanket as if into a hole. In general, the situation is offensive and painful, but the main character understands that she needs to pull herself together and figure out what to do next. Now we see Regina sitting at the table, and in front of her are the maids and the faithful knight. When asked about the rumors, the main character is told that they say that she ran after Eren, and he abandoned her. There is an oppressive silence. The tension is colossal. The servants are afraid to add an extra word. Breaking the silence, Regina asks about Eren himself, and Johan reports that he is preparing to leave abroad. Then a question follows about Herman Silvage, and the knight answers that there is no news about him at all. The questions don't end there. The girl also asks about her younger brother. According to the young man, Theor committed a pogrom in the church. But that's not all. Besides this, the prince dared to sneak out of the palace. This did not end very well. He came back drunk to everyone's shock, but today he is quieter, probably due to a hangover. But Una takes the initiative and asks her mistress if she would like to hear about His Majesty. To an incredible shock, the princess learns that the emperor is right now writing a complaint against the Vestines. The reason for this is that Bernard wants them to take responsibility for the inconvenience and the scandal caused, to which Regina asks to stop this. The request is quite difficult, given the complex nature of the emperor. Una and Johan exchange glances. To herself, the main character believes that rumors could not be avoided because she herself prepared such a place so that everything could be heard and seen. But she was still offended by this situation, and even Theor plunged a knife into her heart with his words. Well, Eren nevertheless goes abroad later because of their agreement, just like the girl planned. But what about Silvage? It is not clear why they did not act when they were given the opportunity to act. She remembers the gift, a necklace that Anita gave her on her birthday. It is about the decoration that the princess asks Una because she asked to take it to her chambers. This question puzzles the maid. She tries to remember about the gift and what happened. And then he adds that none of the servants came, which is why Her Highness is cold with fear of what was said. Excitement is noticeable in her voice. She orders Johan to go to the servants and find out everything. Because of these circumstances, the main character has a palpable sense of foreboding that cannot be easily relieved. She couldn't find any useful information about the necklace in the library, but she had a feeling that something was hidden in it. Soon Johan returns. He leads the girls and reports that he has brought the one she was looking for. The girl trembles, wrings her hands, and turns pale with fear of the emperor's daughter. Regina asks if she understands why she was called, and the servant falls to his knees asking for mercy. The girl reports that her interest made her open the box. She was very curious. Only in the next moment, black smoke appeared from the box, which threw me into a stupor. And then, according to the servant, the contents of the box disappeared when she came to her senses. Then Regina asks the girl what made her stay in the palace after committing such a daring act. Then the maid, falling to her knees and crying, reports that it was so difficult for her to get this job. But she also adds that she did not think that after the princess was so cruelly abandoned, she would look for a gift among others. She expected that they would forget about it. The main character asks her knight what punishment is promised to someone who encroaches on the property of the imperial family. And he replies that either all their property is taken away from them, and they are sent to a servant's house, or both hands are cut off. The girl, in horror, throws herself at the princess's feet, screaming that she only wanted to look at the gift once. Regina does not change her face. She looks at this calmly and completely impartially, and she says that the punishment will be the dirtiest work until she forgives the offender. When the girl is taken away, she shouts words of gratitude to her mistress, not believing in such mercy. There is a blessed silence as the doors finally close behind her and the knight. We see the grandeur of the palace in the rays of the sun, incredible beauty from a bird's eye view. On the balcony, looking at this splendor, a blond man stands completely alone. He now remembers the beautiful eyes of the imperial daughter, full of shock and tears. And then he remembers an oath that the day when he will regret his choice will never come. Well, it seems that these were more big words than actual reality. Because the blonde's scarlet eyes are full of sorrow and melancholy, it seems that something is gnawing at him. It is likely that this is a feeling of guilt towards Her Highness or some other feeling. The main character smiles so brightly and cheerfully, conveying how training refreshes her head. But it seems that her maid is not that happy with this behavior, which is too daring for a princess. It seems that Theor's punishment was extremely severe. It scared not only him, but also his fiancé and servants. However, Regina doesn't care. She stretches contentedly, realizing that her brother will be a good boy, and she can put her thoughts in order. In general, no matter how unpleasant it may be, you should take advantage of the rumors that have spread. She cannot hide the fact that the servants talk among themselves about what happened and feel sorry for her. However, the girl does not lose heart, but from now on admits that she is a scoundrel, that she suffers from unrequited love. And in general, her plan is to destroy everything that she does not like in general. Lady Signy hears from Regina that falling in love makes a girl stronger, but unrequited love can make her tear and throw. A question is asked to Johann when Ser Aaron is leaving, and the answer is that it's already tomorrow. The princess drinks tea and reasons that if the Vestines lose some of their power, then he continues that in this case, Silvagi too, because a balance of power must be maintained. After all, this is precisely what her father, the emperor, is concerned about, and this clearly benefits her plans. And then he remembers that the moment is approaching in which they exchanged forces with other nations for unity. The main obligation is exchange between noble families. We are talking about minor sons. In general, Hermann fits this category, and besides, it is haunting that he is the only son of the Duke, and they are the same age. But she immediately realizes that she is great at making the impossible possible. The maids, shedding tears, notice that the message and quote are excellent, if without the addition of a vile thing. However, the main character has a different opinion, and is ready to endure rumors and the situation for a good purpose. Nothing can compare with the fall of the empire and the death of its younger brother. Now, Regina is already thinking out loud what reason she could find to send Hermann. And now we see a gilded and beautiful carriage driving through the forest, driven by a red-haired knight. And inside this very carriage sits the young prince of the empire, not particularly happy with the trip. Saying goodbye to him, Regina, surrounded by servants, noticed that at all costs he must do one thing in his head. When asked which one, the sister replies that he should not hold back if something is not to his liking. And in general, it doesn't matter how far he goes, because Theor is not one of those who thinks about the consequences. When asked if they usually don't ask him to be exemplary, the sister retorts that he still doesn't obey. The prince does not give up. He pours out new questions about whether the eldest really wants him to start riots. But the main admonitions are to study diligently and return immediately if grades deteriorate. At the frightened mention of her father, the sister remarks that she does not care about the emperor's threats. And despite the fact that she smiles, Theor understands that she really doesn't care about the emperor. She doesn't care. She really does what she wants, whatever she wants. She sees that she seems to have pressure even over her father. After all, his sister even managed to send Duke Silvage's son abroad. Theor is unaware of this because he doesn't understand that it was Vestine who abandoned him, not Silvage. So why is he taking revenge on Hermann? Meanwhile, Regina continues her instruction, attracting attention and distracting from thoughts. She demands that her brother not let anyone raise his hand and not become an errand boy. This surprises the boy. He displeasedly asks what she is talking about. But the princess explains that countless students at the academy will want his favor and money. She wants him to be strong. The younger retorts that his father ordered him to be polite to those who will be important in the empire, but the girl asks whether it is necessary to be polite to those who will serve him. In her opinion, until he receives something in return, there is no need to show any cordiality. He touches the top of his head, strokes it gently, embarrassing his brother, and tells him about his desire to be generous. According to the princess, you should think twice before being generous, keeping in mind the events before her return. Confused, Theor asks his sister what will happen if he becomes a 6. And to this, the main character replies that if this happens, then the first thing she will do is finish him off. Such words clearly make an impression on the younger one, who is in a stupor. But Regina simply does not want history to repeat itself. Now the time is approaching. The prince rises and takes his place in the carriage. The door closes behind him. But, looking through the window, the sister reports that upon the boy's arrival, a gift awaits him at the academy. While Theor is riding in the carriage, he thinks what kind of gift his sister has prepared for him. He has no idea what awaits him, considering how much his sister has changed lately. An assumption appears in his thoughts that perhaps in this way she's going to keep an eye on him. And so soon the carriage arrives at the right place, the speed slows down and finally stops. The carriage stops at the gates of the academy where the prince was heading. It's time to get out. His knight, Sir Jess, gives the package and says that this is the gift that Regina has prepared. Thior mutters, dissatisfied with the fact that since he had him all the time, he did not give him back. But that was the will of the princess. The prince impatiently unwraps the gift given to him. The red-haired knight stares in shock when he sees what the princess handed over. The box is elegantly packaged with a personal and personalized baton for Thior and is engraved with his name. Grinning, the boy understands why his sister said that he would immediately understand how to use it. He immediately begins to wave his club, but the knight declares that there was a message along with the gift. Thior turns around to listen to what message was conveyed with the gift, and this is a proposal to name the baton. And in addition, it's welcoming, to have a lot of fun. It seems that Regina's imagination is tireless. Jess tries to argue, asking if the prince is going to take this gift with him to the academy. But the mischievous boy retorts that he cannot refuse his sister's gift. And now, finally, the gates of the academy open to new arrivals. Finally, Thior declares that in a year he will become the master of this academy. The knight takes his things and sighs. We are transported to the eastern borders of the Elias Empire, high stone walls and gates that are now open. And we hear a voice that says to meet Aaron Vistine, commander of the 1st Battalion. Aaron slowly walks forward, looking somehow gloomy and thoughtful. Suddenly, something perhaps a premonition makes him turn his head, look up. At midday, the brightly shining sun, which seems to blind and burn with its light. He is distracted by the sound of someone else's voice, saying that he is staring at the sky again. This is the commander of the 1st Battalion, Martin Andric, congratulating Aaron for surviving another day. Aaron sighs and tells his comrade that he should train more, otherwise he would be left without an arm if it weren't for him. He reports that he would fight with one hand, is too carefree, and suggests relaxing. Vestine tuts dissatisfied, and Martin wonders what kind of thoughts make him sigh so often. The answer is that thoughts are about him, and Andric declares that you can't frown with such a beautiful face. Also lighthearted, the ash-haired guy says that smiling makes him more attractive. Aaron remembers that Martin is the only one who remains unperturbed by his smile and beauty. The eldest of the Vestines tried to find out what his secret was, why he did not succumb to the charms of beauty. He answered evasively that the whole reason was that he was not interested in the beauty that belonged to a man like himself. Now Aaron asks to stop talking about his face, but Martin argues it's the truth. By the way, Andrich so confidently notes that the Duke's son becomes more absent-minded every time he sees the color purple. After all, Vestine even managed to be distracted by the color of the enemy flag during the battle, and almost missed an arrow flying at him. Then there is an assumption about a possible first love, and they also notice that it is not without reason that he stares at the sunset, because there is the color purple there too. And then he so directly adds, is it really about what Aaron thinks about Princess Regina? Of course, the blonde is dissatisfied with this assumption, but Andric directly continues because this behavior began after his recent return. Aaron tries to retort, saying that Martin understood everything wrong, but it seems they don't believe him. Questions fly into the poor, embarrassed son of Duke Vestine. Why did he reject the one for whom he had feelings? Because she broke off the engagement for his sake. The next suggestion is that maybe Aaron really wants to be like his uncle. It seems that such a thought really surprises his comrade, and he covers his face with his palm. Aaron makes an attack on Martin. He is dissatisfied with the fact that Princess Regina and his uncle are so carelessly mentioned in the conversation. But after such a desperate request to pronounce the name, Martin agrees to stop. True, someone else's grin and sly look indicate that this topic will not be abandoned just like that. Andric asks to clarify whether he understands correctly that the whole point is really not about the princess. At this question, Aaron freezes and seems incredibly embarrassed and backed into a corner. Mumbling under his breath, the blonde says that he just feels sorry for Regina. But this doesn't seem to convince his interlocutor much. A series of new questions remain unanswered. Turning away, the blonde young man is lost in his thoughts. After spending some time at the border, as expected, rumors about what happened died down. Not completely, because there are those who continue to talk about this, which is not surprising, because we are talking about rejected feelings, and even of the princess herself. Aaron naively believed that he could continue to behave as before, that he could forget about all the problems. However, despite such plans and calculations, it became clear over time. The only reason why Regina keeps popping up in his head is the bright and sweet image of Regina in one. In his opinion, it's just a matter of guilt. Yes, that's the conclusion the son of Duke Vestine made. But Martin is not convinced by this. The counter-argument to such words from him is that if he felt guilty every time he rejected a woman, he would have become a monk long ago. In his opinion, now he is not able to think soberly, and people like him will always regret this. To Andrich's displeasure, Aaron makes an attempt to avoid the conversation, not wanting to continue it near other military men, which, by the way, all this time were trying to hear something, being nearby, which Martin just now realized. But it seems that this does not bother the ash-haired man. He calmly clears his throat and smiles. And now it was time for lights out. Night came and everyone went to their places, to rest or to go on guard duty. But Aaron can't sleep. He tosses and turns in bed, unable to find peace for himself. Rising from bed, the Duke's son thinks maybe he can do his paperwork now. With this decision, he turns on the lamp and walks around his room, planning to get down to business. A young man takes a seat at his desk and is ready to get to work. Encouraging himself, he opens the first order and immediately tries to read the words. Just thoughts about something else. Thoughts about what Andrich was suggesting when he said that it's not a matter of guilt at all. Aaron thinks that it is because of Regina that he forgets himself, looking at the purple sky that looks like the princess's eyes. He would really like to forget about this girl so sincerely and strongly, but every day the image of the Emperor's daughter only became brighter and stronger in my memory. Every barely significant detail, voice, and facial expressions, the sound of laughter or voice, everything that was witnessed. Therefore, the fair-haired young man wonders if it's not a matter of guilt, then what is it? With his cheeks red, incredibly embarrassed, he tries to find an answer, or rather tries to find the strength and courage to voice it to himself. Out of place, I also remember how Andrich said that he would become a priest if he felt guilty every time he rejected girls. Remembering the past, Vestine cannot but agree because there were so many confessions to him. It's just that all those unfortunate girls, he confessed to the Duke's son with particular sincerity. Then why does Aaron feel guilty directly towards the princess? Only to her, or is it really not about this far-fetched feeling of guilt, but about something else? Perhaps this is not a feeling of guilt at all, but something else that remains in his heart. But it remains to understand, realize, and admit what kind of feeling this is. It's not easy. Thinking about this, the Duke's son is worried about whether he is ready or not ready to realize the truth. Find out what feeling makes you think about the princess over and over again. However, it seems our dear Aaron was never able to understand what this feeling was, alas. From this moment, 3 years have passed. We are again transported to the palace. It is interesting how the heroes have changed. At first, we see puppies that have clearly grown up. Now they are large and powerful dogs that are now resting. And the next moment, we already see someone's confident steps, but who is it? With perfectly polished shoes and long purple hair, it seems that this is a girl we already know. Yes, it is Her Majesty Regina who is ready to leave. We see her clearly pleased mood. Meanwhile, Aaron and Martin are riding through the forest on horseback. Andrich is glad that they rode this particular road. It's more peaceful. The ash-haired man believes that the road through the forest is more suitable due to the handsome face of the Duke's son, and it is also a shortcut. Andrich asks if Aaron listened to him and they went like this, and he confirms with consent. While Martin is trying to chat the Duke's son up as always, the blonde himself looks longingly towards the palace that is already visible. In addition, the comrade adds that he heard that rumors about that unpleasant incident are still circulating in the capital. While Martin continues the story, Aaron himself is only thinking about what the princess is doing right now. But suddenly a sound distracts you from thoughts and conversations. It seems that the carriage driving next to you is about to capsize. We see an attempt to save the situation by the already familiar world of Jessie, who lunges forward. But everything is in vain and the carriage falls into the lake to the shock of all witnesses to this picture. Without thinking for a second, the red-haired knight throws himself into the water, wanting to save his master. Martin is shocked by what he heard from Jessie and cannot believe that there could be someone from the imperial family in the carriage. Aaron directs the horse forward with a sharp lunge, wanting to help and save the royal person. He stops his trotter already at the very shore. The horse neighs loudly, feeling the emotions of its owner. Andrich tries to appeal to the commander, Aaron, but it is unlikely that he plans to listen. But the next moment, to the shock of the Duke's son himself, we see huge black dogs rushing into the lake. One of them helps the knight stay afloat, and the second gnaws at the opportunity to squeeze inside the carriage. The blonde young man freezes from a particularly exciting feeling of anticipation. As it turns out, a moment later, it's all about anticipation before the meeting, because afterward he hears the princess's voice calling her brother. The young man turns his head. It seems that he even held his breath, fearing that he had only heard it. But no, his eyes do not deceive him, of course not. And what he sees is very real, my dear viewers. If you liked this story, I will make a continuation for you very soon. Be sure to write to me about it in the comments.